Ning went around the city of Seoul with Ely. He went to some restaurants and had some delicious meals. Ely was lacking some clothes, and she didn't want Ning to make any for her. She wanted the feeling of finding new things while shopping, so the two of them went on a shopping spree. "When do we get our house ready?" Ely asked while going through some clothes. "As soon as the director speeds up the land transfer. We should be getting the land within the next 2 days, and then I can make the house in less than a day. It's just a bunch of design work anyway. The system will do the rest," Ning said. "Let me know about the design. I want to create some artifacts integrated into the house," Ely said. "Sure, that works too," Ning said. They spent nearly 5 hours in the city of Seoul before returning to their uncle's house. "Blue, Knight, Sorless, Saf, you guys want to go on an adventure?" Ning asked. "Yes, Master. I've been bored sitting here for the last 2 months," Sorless said, almost pleadingly. "Ooh, another dungeon? Let's go," Safandra said happily. Blue and Knight had only heard about the dungeon and had never seen its inside, so they were very curious about it as well. "All right, let's go." The 6 of them teleported at once and arrived at the southern side of Berlin, Germany. The dungeon department was set up near a river in the north of Potsdam, so Ning and the rest had to walk there. Ely looked around at the different men and women that spoke a language that she did not understand at all. "Oh, this is weird," she said to herself. It had been a very, very long time since she had heard a language she did not understand at all. Even Korean was something she learned by herself through Ning's help, so she had never experienced it beforehand at all. He touched a small necklace that was hidden in her clothes and activated it. Suddenly, she could hear everything around her and understood it perfectly. At the same time, the other 3 beasts did the same as well. Safandra was the only one that did not need this, as the system directly translated anything and everything Ning heard for her. "You guys been to Germany before?" Ning asked Sorless and Safandra. "No, this is my first time," Safandra said. "We never left the house after all." "Great, this is my first time as well," Ning said. "What about you, Ely?" "I may have come here before, but I was very small at the time," she said. "I don't even have a memory of it, despite what you gave me." Well, let's treat this as your first time as well," Ning said. They arrived at the German Dungeon Department headquarters and walked inside. The place here looked more sophisticated than anything in South Korea. It was definitely more expensive for sure. He walked on top of the marble floor and arrived in front of a receptionist. "Hello, I'm here to meet the director of this place," he said. "I'm sorry, sir, the department hasn't opened just yet. Please wait for an hour or 2, she said. "Oh, is the director not here? I thought he would have arrived given that he was notified of my visit," Ning said. The woman looked up curiously. "The director has come, but he won't be she screamed suddenly as she realized who she was looking at. "Are you the Apostles Ning?" she asked. Ning smiled. "I am, and I'm here to meet the director. I'm so sorry for not recognizing you. Please, forgive me. I will notify the director right away," she said, and was already on the phone. A moment later, hurried footsteps came from the hallway to the right as many figures, all important for sure, walked out with surprised looks. "Apostle Ning, welcome," one of the men said. "I am the director of this dungeon." A translator tried to translate his words, but Ning stopped him. "Hello," he said and shook his hand. "Thank you for welcoming me." The director was a little surprised and smiled. "I didn't know you knew German," he said. "I know many things," Ning said. The director smiled in response. He was a short and bald man, but he was definitely not a nobody. From the handshake alone, Ning could tell that he was at least an A-ranked hunter in terms of strength. He quickly introduced everyone to Ning, and Ning shook hands with everyone too. There were ministers, generals, and even 3 apostles that had come to see him and talk with him. "I'm sorry you had to come here by yourself. How did you come here though? I had people stationed at the airport for your arrival. I wasn't made aware that you had landed already," he said. "Oh, I didn't come within any vehicle. I have better methods myself," Ning said. "I see, please let's go talk in my office," the director said. Everyone around him was incredibly respectful to Ning, not out of tradition, but as a necessity. Since Ning was most likely their only solution to the current predicament, they couldn't afford to offend him at all. "You guys want to stay outside for a while? I will be right back," Ning said. "Sure, go inside. I don't think there's much for us to do there anyway, Ely said and sent him away. Ning walked along with the director and ministers and many important governmental figures. Ning arrived at their office, which was a long room with a long table. Ning was made to sit on the longer side of the table, while the director sat opposite to him. Thank you for coming here, the director said. You have no idea what it means to us now that you have accepted our offer. Of course, Ning said. I'm sorry for not coming earlier. I could have saved some life from being wasted. Unfortunately, I was busy and didn't know about this until now. It is unfortunate, the director said, but as they say, it's better late than never. Ning spoke for a few more minutes, confirming the terms of his aid. He was to receive a good chunk of money for removing the sulfur monosulfide rank dungeon, but anything he got from inside there, except the dungeon boss's core, would be their property. Ning agreed easily, as there wasn't much need for sulfur monosulfide ranked monastones for him anyway. He had some other plan for that himself. The apostles there tried to talk with him, but Ning kept asking for them to come with him to the dungeon, so they stopped talking with him. Ning was slightly rude to them, partly because he didn't want to be friends with them at all, and partly because their constellations were staring at him and he was getting annoyed. Now that everything has been finalized, I will go clear the dungeon, Ning said and stood up to leave. Yes, let's go, the director said and took him along. Once out, Ning met up with Ely and the rest. When the director realized that Ely and the other two were going to go along with Ning, he was surprised. Who are these people exactly? The director asked. He tried to figure out if these were the apostles from Korea, but as far as he knew, they were some people else. These are my family, Ning said. This is my wife, and these three are someone I adopted. Oh, I didn't realize you had brought your wife and children along, the director said with a weird look on his face. Sorlus was young enough that he could be adopted by Ning, but no matter how he looked at it, there was no way either Night or Blue could be Ning's children at all. At best, he looked 30 years old. I will have rooms reserved for them in a hotel while you clear the dungeon, the director said and looked towards his assistant to give the order. However, before he could do it, Ning shook his head. I can't let you do that, Ning said. I brought them here so they can enter the dungeon with me. They have been excited about it since I told them about it a few hours ago. What? The director couldn't help but shout in surprise. He wondered if Ning was an idiot for sending his family to danger, especially in a place like an sulfur monosulfide ranked dungeon. Are you sure, Apostle Ning? The director asked. It could be very dangerous. Haha. Don't worry. Such a thing is easy for me. I have the power of 5 gods on my side after all, he said with a proud expression on his face. What? 5 gods? One of the apostles not far away shouted in surprise. Ye, 5, Ning said. Yemis, Thalaxis, Graves, Noraxis, and Hellas are the 5 gods that are helping me today. He was doing his part of making the 5 constellations popular so they would be enticed to continue keeping their alliance with each other, without the thought of betrayal ever crossing their head. Later, he would spread the news through some interviews as well and maybe even help remove those mana circuit problems from many that were still unconscious. I should try and improve my mana too, Ning thought. As of now, he was only a tier 5 mage. He needed to be tier 8 for removing the mana poisoning permanently. The director was still surprised, perhaps far more so even as he realized what it meant to be blessed by 5 gods at once. He could see why Ning was as strong as he was said to be. They drove about half an hour before appearing inside the city of Berlin in an area that was not as populated. It used to be the most populated place in the entire city, but after the dungeon break, many people died, and thus not many chose to live here. Now, the place was mostly barren, the dungeon given a wide perimeter so no human could enter again. Ning could see that there was nearly a kilometer of radius around the dungeon. It looked like it had gotten worse after the dungeon had turned to an sulfur monosulfide ranked dungeon. They all arrived outside the dungeon gate and Ning got ready to enter. He stood in front of it with everyone and looked towards the director. I do not know how long this will take me. It is supposed to take a very long, so you might have to wait a while. I suggest you go back and have others tell you when we are out, Ning told him. The director nodded. I will leave after you are all in, he said. All right. Let's go, Ning said and walked through the gate with all 3 of them. He, Ely, Blue, Night, and Sorlus arrived in an entirely new place. Safandra flew out of Sorlis's clothes, which she had been hiding inside this entire time, and looked around her. "What the hell is this place?" she asked. They arrived in a dark place with a dark fog covering everything, not even letting them see anything. The black fog visually impaired every single one of them there, including Ning. "I can't see anything," Blue said. "Knight, is this you?" "No, not me," Knight said. His divine sense spread from him and covered a massive area, only to be surprised that he couldn't find anything. "There's nothing here," Ely said in surprise as well. Even she couldn't see anything but flat land with her godlike senses. Sorlis frowned a little. "Master, I sense evil," he said. Ning nodded. This much darkness, especially this thick and black fog, it was definitely from some dark magic that had been used in this place. "What exactly is going on here?" Safandra asked. "Can you guys even see any monsters to fight?" "No," Knight said. "There is nothing to fight." "Was Sorlis's dungeon like this too?" Ely asked Ning. "No, this is different," Ning said. "But I do believe I know what's going on. If my theory is correct, we will find our foe not far from us." Ely and the rest didn't understand what Ning meant. "We will find our foe soon?" she asked. "But I can't see anything." "You're not looking properly," Ning said. "Either way, since our foe is waiting for us to arrive, let us make them wait a little longer." Ning sat down on the ground and closed his eyes. "Master?" Blue called with a weird expression on his face. "Are you tired?" "No, I'm trying to cultivate," Ning said. "Here?" He couldn't help but ask. "But there's barely any chi. We have to use our own chi to fight. There's nothing to cultivate." "I'm not cultivating chi," Ning said. "I'm cultivating mana. I want to improve my mage tier so I can use more useful magic spells." This might be the right place to do so," Ely said and sat down next to him. "To be honest, I haven't gotten the time to rest properly since we came back. I want to just sit back and relax." "Here," Ning said and brought out something. He created a few beds for all of them to lie down in. It felt quite weird to lie down in a place that reeked of evil, but what else could they do while waiting for Ning to be done with whatever he was doing? Ning took out an sulfur monosulfide ranked mana stone and started devouring the mana in it to advance himself. Just a single one was enough for him to reach tier 6. The rest simply talked and waited while Ning did so. Time passed slowly, but none of them cared. Every single one of them was used to spending a large amount of time doing basically nothing. There were a couple of times that Sorlis and Blue tried to get into a fight to figure out who was the better water dragon, but thankfully Ely was there to keep the two in order. Ning finally stopped a few hours later after finishing absorbing 3 different sulfur monosulfide ranked mana stones. He was tier 6 by now and had made considerable advancement towards tier 7. Just 2 more tiers were all he needed, but the tier 7 to tier 8 journey would take a lot of time. "I'll need to find a way for that," Ning thought. He hoped to be able to do that by killing many tier 7 or as the humans called it, SSS ranked, monsters. Ning didn't get the last SSS ranked mana stone from the monster he fought since he ended up becoming its master. However, this time around, he was certain that he had no plan on becoming the master of anything like this. "Let's go," Ning said and stood up. The bed they were all standing on vanished, and the group began their journey toward the center of the dungeon. "Light of Holy Grace," Ning said softly with his left hand pointed in front of him. In that very moment, a bright yellow flash of light shot out from his hand that pushed away the dark miasma that was blocking everyone's vision. When it went away, Ning and the rest could finally see ahead of them, not that there was anything to look at exactly. Or so they thought. Blue took a few too many steps and suddenly the ground in front of them started making some sort of sound. "What's that?" he shouted in wonder. He wasn't worried in the slightest bit. A hand pushed its way out of the ground as the dirt separated. The group looked at the hand and instantly realized what they were looking at. "A skeleton." "Ew," Safandra said. She was the first one to react out of every one of them, even Blue. She used her powers and both pushed and pulled the skeleton. She pushed its front side and pulled its back side. Essentially, she crushed the skeleton with its own body, destroying it to pieces. Those pieces tried to move, but they weren't strong at all. Soon enough, they stopped moving as the spell that animated them stopped working as well. "Skeletons? We're going to fight skeletons?" Safandra asked. "Yes," Ning said. "Although, That's a problem. What's the problem? Ely asked. She couldn't see anything that could be considered a problem at all. Look at this, he said as he scattered around the skeletons. It's not here. There's no mana stone. Sorlus was the first to realize. That makes sense though, doesn't it? It's like a puppet, puppeteered by some sort of corpse slaver, Ely said. Yeah, and that's problematic, slightly, Ning said. I won't get any sulfur monosulfide ranked mana stone. If everything we fight ends up becoming a summon or reanimated skeleton, then we might have a bad time. And I promised the German government I would give them everything. Don't worry, we will figure something out, Ely said. Besides, what's there to worry about? We're doing them a favor so they will have to accept whatever we tell them anyway. Yeah, I know, Ning said with a sigh, but I don't want to go down that route. I don't want to antagonize the countries or I would have to fight them to even try and enter their sulfur monosulfide ranked dungeons afterward. As I said, we'll figure out something, Ely said. We should continue moving. Ning nodded. He had no other choice. Skeletons popped from the ground one after another. Ning wasn't sure if the skeletons were prepared to jump out of the dirt in their presence or if the boss at the center was using its magic every single time. Whatever it was, Ning and the rest were new fighting skeletons, and those were incredibly easy to destroy. The first variation came with a skeleton with a sword and shield. It didn't know how to use it, but it was fighting. Then came ones with bows and arrows, daggers, and hammers. There was even one that could use some magic. Then came the Death Knights, skeletal monsters that were fully clad in armor, and rode the skeleton horses. Sorlus destroyed them with a single water spell. Let's go meet the boss. Ning and the rest of them arrived at the center of the field where nothing was there. However, a moment later, a coffin lifted itself out of the ground and flew overhead. Who dares tread inside my realm? A raspy, evil voice spoke in a language that only Ning and Sorlus could understand. The rest of them had to rely on their translation skills in their artifact to get it secondhand. Ning looked at the monster that had appeared in front of them. It was a floating humanoid body that had its clothes wrapped in a cloth that was furthermore wrapped around in chains. Various magic circles were drawn on its leg, but from the look of it they were no longer working. The figure wore a blue mantle that was completely torn up in most places and only covered up to its chest. Its stomach and arms were visible and to everyone's surprise, they were skeletal arms. Its head was a half-rotten human head, with bones being visible through some of the cheeks. Its eyes were nowhere to be found, and instead, it was glowing a crimson red. The figure held a black skull that seemed to have some immense amount of power. I knew it, Ning said with a wide smile. A death lich. Which one of you wants to fight it? They all looked at the beasts. Safandra looked a little disgusted and didn't want to fight it at all. Ning wasn't even sure if she could. Mana was far stronger than spiritual energy after all. I can give it a try, Blue said and walked forward. Seeing this, Sorlus had to show off as well. No, I will fight it, he said and walked forward. The two started quarreling as to who got to fight and neither of them actually started fighting. However, seeing as the two had moved towards it, the Death Lich moved. Suddenly, the black skull on its hand opened up and a terrifying screech left its mouth. Nearly everyone had to hold their ears to ward off the sound and even that didn't help. Sorlus was the only one affected in the group for some reason, but the most he was feeling was slight dizziness. Ugh, I hated that, he said. Are you okay? Ely asked Sorlus. What was that? It's attacking our souls, Ning said. You three have a strong soul so you weren't affected. Meanwhile, Safandra and I don't really have any souls, so we are also fine. In the end, Sorlus is the only one that took some damage, but he's too strong to be hurt the same way a normal mage would be. That must be it, Sorlus said. My head aches slightly, but I'm fine. All right. Sorlus, step back. I don't know if you are strong enough to face it or not, but it won't be an easy match for you. Whether you like it or not, you are one of the weakest of the group after all. Blue gave a wide grin that screamed, I'm better than you towards Sorlus. Sorlus grumbled and went backward. All right, Blue, go take it. Oh you. No, wait, I want to fight it, Ely said and moved forward. Can I fight it? Of course, Sister Ely. Please go ahead, Blue said. Are you sure, honey? You're too strong for this fight, Ning said. I know, Ely said as she reached into her storage amulet and brought out something. but I have a few artifacts that I've been wanting to test out for a while. Let's see how good this work." The Death Lich moved again. Its left hand grabbed on top of the skull on its right hand, and together they pointed it into the sky. The skull opened its mouth again, and this time IE shot something into the sky. "Be careful, it's attacking you," Ning told Ely. "It's fine," Ely said, not giving much thought to the attack that was going to fall on her at any second. Instead, she planted something firmly onto the ground and propped it out. Ning looked at the camera-like equipment and almost even thought it was one. Except, Ely opened the front of the artifact and there was nothing but a giant hole. Ely grabbed it by two sides and just like a camera lens, a long tube popped out from the front. Like lightning, something flashed from the sky and struck the ground right where Ely was, destroying everything in a small radius. However, when the light disappeared, not a hair on her head had been touched. "Well, I hope this works," he said and poured chi into the artifact. Suddenly, the tube at the front glowed and something shot out of it, just like a cannon. A massive chi blast shot from the front and struck the lich right where it stood. The world shook at the attack and even Blue and Night had to step back in surprise. The power was just too much with it. It must have all been decimated, Safandra couldn't help but say. "I don't see how anything could have survived that." Ely's words stopped in her mouth when she saw something still floating in the air, even after her cannon had attacked it. "No way!" she shouted in surprise. "How can that monster still be alive after taking an attack from my— Oh wait, it's just Ning. Honey, what are you doing?" Ning floated in front of the mostly destroyed lich. "You should have told me if you were going to destroy it so suddenly. You nearly destroyed the mana core hidden in it too," he said. He turned around and looked at the remaining body of the lich. His hand reached into its chest and pulled out the SSS rank mana stone. When the lich's dead body fell to the ground, it dissipated in flakes of darkness and a portal appeared right in front of them. Now that they had cleared the dungeon, they were free to leave. So, one by one, all of them walked out of the portal, arriving back in Berlin where Ning could see the director just turning around to leave. Ning and the rest appeared outside the dungeon. The German director looked at them with confused eyes and opened his mouth to ask something, but then he saw something else instead that made it stuck open as he looked in shock. Ning felt the change as well and saw what was happening behind him. The entire white swirl of energy that was the dungeon gate suddenly shook and then collapsed, disappearing in wisps of energy that almost made it look like it was an illusion. However, many had gone in beforehand and thus they knew that the dungeon was real. This was to say that their seeing the current dungeon meant that the dungeon had truly disappeared. The director was shocked, but not for the reason Ning believed it was. The director had always known that the moment the dungeon was cleared, it would collapse. The thing that had surprised him the most had been the speed at which it was cleared. Ning looked to the sky to see where the sun was and then down towards the people that were still standing around. Ely and the rest noticed it too and couldn't help but be surprised. Even the stoic knight showed a bit of emotion at this moment as he hadn't expected this to happen. After all, from what they had learned from Ning, the opposite was supposed to have happened. "How long were we in?" Ning asked the director. 5, maybe 10 seconds, the director said, trying to hide his shock. "Did you really clear it in just 10 seconds? "No, it took some time," Ning said. "We spent nearly half a day inside, and it seemed that translated to nothing out here. The last dungeon I was in was the opposite, so it seems not all dungeons follow the same flow of time." Ning would have to remember that the next time, or he could just ask the system to tell him. He should probably do that starting now. "So it is really gone?" the director asked. "No chance of the dungeon appearing again?" "Yes, it is gone," Ning said. "Also, I have a small bad news." What bad news?" The director got ready to be disappointed. "Let's talk elsewhere, away from prying eyes," Ning said while looking at the few people that were gathered around. "Oh, yes. Please, come with me," the director said, taking Ning and Ely to a large SUV. With a few other important figures, the SUV was quickly full, making Night, Blue, and Sorless have to move to another vehicle. However, before they could go in, Ning's voice stopped them. "You guys go have fun. You don't have to come with us," he said. "After this, we'll be going to France for a while, so make use of your free time to see the city." The three beasts accepted, and with Safandra at the lead, they left the dungeon area on foot. They could have flown away, but Ning told them to remain as inconspicuous as possible. The director wasn't happy with this after he was notified in the SUV, since letting people so valuable alone was not what he wanted, but he respected Ning's choice and let the three be. What else could he even do? Deny the person who just cleared an sulfur monosulfide rank dungeon by himself? He might have been heavily stressed the past 2 months, but that hadn't made him go senile. So, what is this bad news? The director asked. Ning told him about the dungeon. The director was surprised that a dungeon with plant monsters had turned into one with a death lich and skeletons inside. He could swear that he had heard about it being able to change somewhere before, but it wasn't in the forefront of his thoughts, so he hadn't thought of it. Was it strong? The director asked. Relative to who you sent before, very. I doubt anyone could have survived it, he said. I even suspect that they were turned into skeletons to fight for the lich. I see, the director said. He had half hoped for the people to still be alive, but they had all but confirmed those people's death. Now that the dungeon was gone, their funerals would have to be held. Well, time moved fast in there, so it must have been years since they entered. They would have died due to the lack of food even if they hadn't had to fight the lich itself, the director said. Yes, Ning said. And here is the worst part. Since it was a lich, its summons were monsters without any mana. As such, we weren't able to harvest any mana stone, aside from the liches itself. Ning pulled out the mana core he had acquired from the lich. This is what I got, only this, he said. What should we do in this case? The director hesitated a bit. Ning hadn't truly broken the deal, but it still felt bad for the director to give him what he had asked for without getting the same worth in return. Besides, he was suspecting that Ning was lying as well. It wasn't impossible to have a dungeon where only the boss had a mana stone, but they were incredibly rare. He had to keep that in mind too. How about this? Ning said instead. Since I couldn't bring you anything but get rid of the dungeon, pay me what you think is a fair price. How does that sound? Are you sure? It was honest for not thinking of the possibility, the director said. I know, but I feel bad for you guys not getting anything. I wish to give you some leeway so we can keep the relationship good. Please decide what you wish to do on your own, Ning said. For now, I have some things to do in France, so I will have to get moving. In France? The director asked curiously. Would you like us to book you a private jet? Ning smiled. No need, he said. He grabbed Ili's hand and said, goodbye. Suddenly, he and Ili disappeared from the van, surprising the director and everyone else in it. Ning and Ili arrived on the outskirts of Nantes City in France. They arrived alongside an abandoned alleyway and walked out with hands still holding each other. As soon as they were out, Ning could see the river Loire across from them. Seeing that gave him an idea of where to go. However, as he was about to move, he noticed that Ili wasn't moving at all. He turned around to see that she was staring at the river with wide eyes, which were starting to get misty with tears. You okay, honey? Ning asked her. Ili's hands shivered a little before she got a hold of herself. Yes, she said, wiping her ears. I just got emotional. I remembered seeing this river all the time when I was stuck in my room, and the memory overwhelmed me a little. Ning noticed her slightly trembling hands and held them together tightly. You must be nervous, he said. I am, Ili said truthfully. It had been ages since she had seen her brother, so just the thought of seeing him caused her to get nervous all of a sudden. What would he think when he saw her sister that was supposed to be dead? How would she explain it to him? Should she even explain it? Many thoughts swarmed her head, making it hard to think properly. Ning patted her hand and squeezed it tightly. It's all okay, he said. I'm here with you. Ili took a deep breath and smiled. Thank you, she said. Let's go, I think I remember my way home. Ning let Ili take the lead since it was her hometown after all, even if it was thousands of years ago for her. She remembered mostly, but it had still been over a decade since her memory, so things had changed. The dungeon breaks had especially changed it quite a lot. Ning helped her through a few turns, but she was still able to remember most of it. Finally, she arrived in front of a tall apartment building and stood there silently for a second. This is it, she said. This is where I used to live. He's still here, right? Yes, he still lives in your same old apartment, Ning said. Ili took a deep breath and looked at the metal panel on the side with apartment numbers. She remembered the apartment she lived in and pressed the button. She could hear the buzzing all the way up from the 15th floor, and if she were to use her divine sense, she could even see her brother, but she found it hard to do that right now. She buzzed again, and this time she got an answer. "Who is this?" the voice asked. Ely took a sharp breath when hearing her brother's voice. She tried to speak but found it hard to make any sound. Still, she forced herself to speak. "This is Chase, right?" she asked. "Yes, I am Chase. Who are you?" he asked. "Chase, it's me, Claire," Ely said. The voice paused for a second. "I don't know any Claire," he said. "No, it's me, Claire, your sister," Ely said. "Brother, it's me." The voice paused again for a second and this time spoke with an angry tone to it. "Is this some sort of sick joke?" "My sister is dead and has been for many years," he said. "I don't know how you found that out, but please leave." Chase left, leaving Ely in a stunned state, unable to do anything. Ning saw that inside. "You expected this, didn't you?" he asked. "He doesn't believe you. He has no reason to. Do you have anything you can tell him to make him remember?" Maybe," Ely said, forcing back the tears. She buzzed in again and waited for her brother to answer. It took nearly 3 buzzes before Chase answered again. "What?" he asked with a sharp voice. "Do you remember my 7th birthday?" Ely asked. "What?" Chase was confused. "What are you tall?" "We were poor since father had just passed away, and mother was sick that day. She couldn't go out to get anything for us and you had to stay with her the entire time. I was starting to think my birthday would pass away without any celebration. I was sad. But right before midnight, you surprised me with a strawberry cake. It was small and you told me you asked the people from the bakery to give it to you since they were going to throw it anyway. We didn't have candles, so you stuck a matchstick on the small cake and lit it. I remember the smile on my face when I blew it," Ely said. "Do you remember that, Chase? That is one of the happiest memory I have of my childhood, and a memory of just how much you loved me and cared about me." Ely waited for a bit, but it didn't look like her brother was going to speak at all. However, he suddenly spoke again, his voice barely containing his involuntary tremblings. How do you know that?" "No one but my sister and I should know that," he said. He was too shocked to ask anything else. "That's because it's me, Claire," Ely said. "It's your sister." But my sister died," Chase said. "Yes, and I was born again. I reincarnated," Ely said. "That's not possible," Chase said. "How can someone come back to life? The whole world breaks with gods giving powers to everyone, and you think reincarnation is not possible? I know you are hard-headed, brother, but please think a little," Ely said. Chase took a deep breath, loud enough that he could be heard from the intercom. "If you really are my sister, reborn or not, you should know the combination to our door's lock," he said. The gate buzzed and opened up. "Come up and enter, I will wait for you," he said. The speaker crackled as it was shut off and Ely looked at the open front gate. "Let's go in." Ning arrived in front of the door to Ely's old apartment, with Ely trailing a few meters behind. She had tears in her eyes that she was desperately trying to hold back, but her emotions were getting the best of her. Ning knocked on the door and stepped aside, letting Ely go in front of him. The door opened slowly to reveal a man in his late 20s. He had a head full of hair, although some of them had gone gray. His beard was rough and it looked like he hadn't cut it in a few days at least. He was wearing a thin-rimmed spectacle and was wearing a pair of sweatshirts and pants. He looked at Ely, someone who obviously looked about the same age as him, and frowned. "Are you really Claire?" the man asked. "Brother," Ely said as tears rolled down her eyes. "It's really me, Claire." She had proved herself through the story she had said a minute ago through the intercom, but Chase still found it hard to believe. How could he? His sister, who had died about 7 years ago, had apparently come back to life somehow and she was nearly old as him. That shouldn't be possible at all. Ely moved and hugged her brother suddenly. Chase tried to dodge, but she was too quick for him. "I'm so happy to see you again, brother. I'm so happy," she said. Ning watched from the side with a small smile on his face. He had thought he would no longer be affected by seeing people get reunited after what he had done 100 years ago, but somehow it was still getting to him. "I can't believe it. Are you really our Claire?" Chase couldn't help but ask again. "Yes," Ely said. "Although my name is Eleonora right now. I no longer go by Claire," she said. "I've lived a different life after I was reincarnated after all." I can't believe it, Chase said. I'm still finding it hard to process. But you know the story. No one else is supposed to know about it. It really is me, brother, she said. I'm sorry for not coming earlier. I was in an entirely different place and wasn't aware that you would still be alive. Ely finally stopped hugging her brother and wiped her tears. Oh yes, I forgot to introduce you. This is Ning, my husband, she said while calling for Ning to come right by her. Ning walked forward and held out his hand. Hello, brother-in-law, he said with a smile. Chase gave a weird look when he saw Ning, almost as if he should have known him from somewhere, but he couldn't think of anything clearly at the moment, so he ignored it. He shook his hands and nodded. You can call me Chase, he said. Come on in. I will get you some coffee or tea, whatever you like. Anything works for me, Ning said. Same for me, Ely said. Chase stopped and turned around towards Ely. What would Claire choose? He asked. Ely smiled a little and asked, Are you still trying to figure out if I'm lying or not? She asked. Claire wouldn't choose anything. My illness meant I couldn't consume caffeine, so I had to stick with water or milk. But I'm no longer ill, so I can drink anything. Chase smiled when he heard that. I'm starting to believe that you might just be my little sister, he said. While Chase went to prepare some coffee, Ely walked around the house and looked at the various things that had changed in the time she had been missing, and the things that had remained the same. She went to her old room and saw that it was neatly tidied up. There were a dozen or so DVD cases to the side for all the old movies she used to watch on a loop. Most of them were cartoon movies from her childhood. She popped open the box and saw the disc inside. You haven't thrown out any of my old movies? She asked loudly. Chase, who had been trying to make sense of whatever the hell was happening to him right now, walked out of the kitchen and arrived at her little sister's room. There, he saw an excited Ely checking through the various boxes. So you know about this too, he said. Which one was Claire's favorite? Ely smiled and picked up one of the boxes with a dark-skinned man next to a blue genie. This one of course, she said. Why is that? Her brother asked, fully knowing the answer already. This was the first DVD you brought for me to watch after I couldn't leave the house, she said. Also the song about seeing the world stuck with me is something that would be my only wish if I could ever have one fulfilled. But you already knew that. Chase looked slightly shocked. Are you truly Claire? I still can't believe it, he said. You don't have to believe me right now. I'm back, and I'll be here for a long time. You can gradually believe it when you can, she said. You should go check the coffee now, it's about to spill. Oh crap. Chase quickly ran back to the kitchen and closed the stove right before the coffee overflowed. Ely walked by the kitchen and looked at the state. You make coffee on a stovetop? She asked. You haven't bought one of those fancy artifacts, I mean devices that make coffee for you? She asked. I can't, Chase said while he poured the coffee into 3 white, ceramic cups. I'm a little low on money. Low? Ely asked. Are you still having trouble with money? I thought that would change since you were an A-ranked hunter. It's not that I don't earn enough, he said. I just have too much debt to pay. Ely felt a tinge of pain in her heart when she heard that. Was that because of me? I wouldn't say it was because of you, but yeah. Turned out Mother had incurred a lot of debt to be able to keep up with your treatment, Chase said. I only learned about it 4 years ago when people kept looking for Mother for her missing payments. However, by then, Mother had already. Chase couldn't continue. Ely gave a blank look and nodded. I heard she died in a dungeon break, she said. Was her final moment painless? She was coming home from work when the monsters attacked. As far as I know, it was quick. Ely took a deep breath when she heard that. That's good, she said. Chase brought out the tray full of coffee, and Ely found a picture of herself. Honey, look, this is what I looked like before, she said, showing her photo to Ning. Oh wow, you were cute, Ning said. Cuter than you are right now. Ely pouted and kicked him in the leg. Stop joking, she said. She sat on the couch next to Ning and looked at her own pictures, reminiscing about the days from her past from a very, very long time ago. She had lived many lifetimes worth of years since then, but the vivid memory Ning had given her helped in making her first one of the better ones in her mind. So, tell me more, Chase said as he sat down opposite them on a stool. What was your life like? How did you two meet? Where were you this entire time? Ely looked at Ning. Can I? She asked. Ning shrugged. Your choice, he said. Ely nodded and sighed a little. This might seem a little surprising, but technically, I am an alien right now, she said. Chase nearly dropped his cup of coffee. You're a what? An alien? What does that mean? He asked. When I died, I was reincarnated into a different planet, she said. That was where I was raised and lived for a long time before I met him. After we met, we fell in love and got together. Then, stuff happened, but to keep it short, he told me that you were still alive back here due to how slow time moved on Earth compared to the other planet. So, I decided to come back and see you. Chase nodded as he listened to everything he said and then suddenly started shaking his head sideways. I didn't get a single thing you just said, he said. You come from another planet? And you age faster there? How old are you even? Well, don't be shocked, but currently, I am about 3,000 years old. This time Chase actually dropped his coffee. However, before it could hit the ground, Ely caught it with her chi, along with all the coffee that had spilled, and placed it all back in the cup before floating it next to her brother. Also, I'm a cultivator. It's similar to being a mage but only stronger, she said. Chase's hands shook as he tried to grab the cup floating in front of him. He grabbed it, but he still dropped it. Why you are an alien, he said. Then, did you somehow get my sister's memory? Why are you here? He asked. Ely sighed. The progress was starting to regress a little. Brother, come on. Don't be like this, she said. I came all the way from another galaxy just so I can meet you again, and you act like I'm trying to abduct you or something. Chase took a deep breath. Are you? He asked. No, Ely said with an exaggerated expression. It's all right. You're still in shock. Chase wiped his brows and breathed audibly. So are you Claire or not? I'm still unsure, he said. I am, Ely said. I was just reborn far away. Chase nodded when he heard that and took a deep breath. I see, he said. I need a drink. This early? Ely asked as she looked around for a clock, before finding one on the wall next to her. It's 9 in the morning. Huh? 9? Chase turned around to look at the clock as well. Oh no, I'm late. I need to hurry to the dungeon quickly. You're going to the guild? Ely asked. On a day like today? I'm sorry, Chase said. It's a very important dungeon run. If I do well in it, I can be promoted to the main A rank team for the guild and will get to go in better dungeon runs. I will also earn more. He was about to leave but hesitated for a second. Please understand, he said. Go on, Chase, Ning said. We get it. Ely nodded in the end and Chase left to get dressed. He came back in a suit and pants that made him look almost professional. Almost because there were creases all over the place, making him look quite bad in it. You should iron your clothes, Ely said as she moved her palm. Her chi moved through his clothes, magically ironing out any creases and rough spots. Thank you, Chase said mindlessly before moving to grab his keys and wallet from the drawer next to the wall. He turned around and looked at the two with a hesitant expression. What will you two be doing? Will you stay here until I come back? He said, while his eyes darted towards the clock every single time. Ning got curious. When is this dungeon run supposed to start? He asked. In 10 minutes, he said. It's supposed to start around 9:15. I'm sorry I must leave right now. Please stick around, or don't. Do whatever you want. I will be back by 1 o'clock in the afternoon so we can talk again then. Sure, Ely said. Do you need me to take you? You seem to be in a hurry, Ning said. Chase turned around. On what? He asked. He then got a little closer and asked, You're not going to take me on a spaceship, are you? Ning chuckled when he heard Chase being worried. Ely couldn't help but chuckle as well. He does have a spaceship. Do you want to use that? She asked. Chase gave a dry laugh, unsure if they were joking or not. Don't worry, that's not what I was suggesting, Ning said. My transportation medium is faster than anything you can find in any part of the world. And it is not a spaceship? Chase asked again. No, Ning said as he stood up. Ely did so as well and walked up next to Chase. Chase tried to step back a little, but Ning grabbed his arm before he could do so. Ely grabbed onto Ning's shoulders and the next moment they disappeared. To Chase, he was in his apartment at one moment, and in the next, he was somewhere outside. The warded his eyes against the blinding sun for a second as his pupils dilated to let enough light in for him to not wince. It took a few seconds and he put down his hands and finally looked around. His face showed a sign of shock when he saw that he was in front of the dungeon where he was supposed to meet his guild members. How did we get here? He asked. Teleportation, Ning said simply. Chase was surprised when he heard that, but it wasn't any more surprising or shocking than anything else that was happening today. Did we appear here suddenly? He asked while he looked around at the people that went past them. How do they not see us? They do, Ning said. I've just put a slight anti-perception veil on us, so they won't be looking at us. What? Anti-perception veil, Ning said. It makes people not want to focus on you when they look towards you. It's a simple skill I learned recently. I see, Chase said. He hadn't understood what Ning had said at all. All right, before you go, Ning said as he brought out a bracelet. Chase was only wondering what it was when Ning suddenly placed it on the man's wrist. Chase got a little worried and tried to take it off, but it wasn't coming off. He tried it again, but no matter what he did, it wasn't coming off. What did you do? What is this? He asked angrily, as angry as one could get in the face of aliens. Don't worry about it. It won't harm you or anything, Ning said. It just makes you unable to tell anyone about us. You see, we do have to remain a little careful. Ely looked at Ning with a knowing look and Ning simply shrugged. He didn't want to tell the guy that it was to protect him from any threat and let him know if he was in danger where even the bracelet couldn't save him. Ning felt that telling this to someone who was so afraid would only make them more afraid and untrusting of their words. Instead, telling half-truth that could be accepted was the better way to go. Hey Chase, you're finally here. The leader is asking for us all to gather inside. A girl rushed out the gate and called him. Oh, hello Anna. I'm coming, he said before slowly turning towards Ning and Ely. So, will I see you guys later? Of course, Ely said. Your sister is back home. You won't get to be away from me for long enough. Chase gulped a bit and nodded before leaving. Ning smiled a bit and looked at him walk off. Do you think he likes her? His voice definitely changed a little when he saw her, he said. I don't know, Ely said. He was pretty afraid of us. Maybe he thought she would be in trouble for seeing us. Ely's own voice was getting a little higher as well. Ning hugged her with one arm and consoled her a bit. It's all right. He'll understand in a day or two, he said. Just wait for him to realize that his dead sister is truly back home again. Ely nodded and wiped what little tears she had been holding back this entire time. Also, your brother must have been way too shocked, Ning said. He didn't recognize me at all. Are you really that recognizable though? Ely asked. I'm starting to doubt it. Maybe they have just heard about you and have never actually seen you. I suppose that might be it as well, Ning said. So, where to next? I don't think he'll be out for quite some time. Let's just go back to the apartment. I want to spend some time in my old home, Ely said. Together, the two of them returned to the apartment. Ning sat down on the couch and let Ely roam through the room, looking at the many things that were the same and the many things that were different. A few minutes later, Ning heard Ely sob again. She was inside a room that wasn't being used for anything but hoarding whatever was unneeded to Chase. Ning walked in and saw a small portrait at the top of a young woman with an infant in her arms and another small boy by her side. There was a man that looked similar to Chase in those pictures, and they all looked happy. Is this your mother's room? Ning asked her. Ely nodded and continued crying. Thousands of years would take away the love one felt for one's family. Ning had been sad after hundreds of thousands of years. Compared to that, Ely's time was minuscule. He let her cry as he thought that was the right thing to do. After crying for a while, Ely went to her old bedroom and put on her favorite movie in the DVD player that was in there. The player didn't work, so Ning had to fix it quickly before the movie started playing again. Together, the two of them spent the next few hours watching the movie in silence, interrupted occasionally by a few giggles here and there. Ning and Ely were on their second movie when the door to the apartment slammed open suddenly. He's back, Ning said. Why is he so sweaty? Oh, he must have had to walk all the way back because he didn't take his car, Ely said. Oh, right, Ning said. I should have remembered. Ning got out of bed and walked outside. I'm sorry, Chase. I should have come to get why. It's you, Chase shouted suddenly. I'm what? Ning asked curiously. It's you, the Apostle Ning. It's you, isn't it? Chase asked. He fished through his pocket and pulled out a smartphone before showing the screen to Ning. This is you, right? Ning looked closely and saw a news headline with a small picture next to it. The news read of how he had closed the sulfur monosulfide rank dungeon in Germany today, and how he had the power of 5 gods behind him. Oh, yes. That is me, Ning said with a smile. Why you? How are you an apostle? You're an alien, Chase said. Yes, Ning said. And aliens can't be an apostle? Is there a rule like that? Chase tried to come up with an argument, but nothing he could think would make sense to be used in the current talk. Also, you shouldn't keep calling your sister and brother-in-law aliens. That's quite rude, you know? Ning said with his arms crossed. We were both from the Earth in our previous lives anyway. What? Chase asked with an incredible look on his face. Oh, did I not mention it before? I reincarnated too, just like your sister, Ning said. Come on, we can sit and talk. The dazed Chase sat by the couch and Ning talked with him for a while. Ely also came out and sat on his other side, telling Chase various things as well. Chase was still too dumbfounded to understand everything, but he at least got the gist of it all. They talked for a while before Chase went off to cook something to eat. Once he was back with food, Ning asked a question he had been meaning to ask since he met the man. Do you think you can migrate to Korea with us? He asked. I'm going to build a massive house there with various facilities, and I'm sure you can make use of it too. Go to Korea? Chase asked. You want me to move to Korea? Yes, brother, Ely said. It will be easier to keep track of you and meet you every day. But France is my home. I can't leave France. I don't even know Korean. Living there will be hard, Chase said. Clearly, he was reluctant and Ning didn't want to force him. Well, if you don't want to, then we can't force you, Ning said. However, in that case, we might have to create some magic circles so Ely can teleport around the world easily. Why teleport? I can just fly here. Won't even take me 5 minutes, Ely said. Chase took a deep breath when he heard that. Your spaceships are that fast? He asked. Ely couldn't help but chuckle when she heard that. You might not need it, but it's still easier. It will also help Young-hee and Hai-ah go around the world easily. I want them to see the outside world, Ning said. Okay. How do you make a magic circle? Ely asked. Is it like formations? Kinda, Ning said. It's about the same difficulty, but of course, the symbols in the circle do different things. Maybe I should have the government start using it as well. As far as I know, none of them have any idea on what it does. No one was taught about it, were they? Ely asked. Everyone only knows what the constellation tells them. If they don't want to divulge some information, what can the humans do? You're right, Ning said. I should go share this information with the government right away. Ning called the number for the director back in Korea. The number rang for a few seconds before it was picked up. Ning? What's going on? The director picked up his phone. Oh, Director Sung. I was hoping we could talk about something very important right now, Ning said. Right now? The director asked while checking his watch. It's 9 o'clock. Can't it wait until you return from Germany? I'm back home. Oh, Ning said as he looked around. My apologies. I forgot about the time difference. I'll contact you once I'm back from France tomorrow. Okay. See you, Tomo. Wait, did you say France? Weren't you in Germ? Ning ended the call and turned around to see a slightly angry Ely. What's wrong? He asked. Why are you so impulsive? She said. Stop doing whatever comes to your mind first. Think a little. Oh, okay, Ning said. Geez, you did the same thing back in the director's office in Korea as well. You left me there alone and went God knows where, she said. Yes, honey. I get it. I'll think a little more, Ning said. Look, your brother is getting worried. You should drop it. Ely sighed and said nothing else. So, back on topic. Since Chase doesn't want to come with us, I will make a magic circle in a few days that will connect one of the rooms in this apartment to one of the rooms in our new house, Ning said. We'll have a house ready by then? Ely asked. I can do it with a snap of a finger, Ning said. We can have our house whenever we want. Although, you should let me know what additions you want to do. I will have to integrate those into the blueprint that I'm preparing with the system. Once the director gets our land passed, I will make our house there. Ely nodded. I'll work on it tonight, she said. Good, Ning said. Let's spend some time with your brother today. We will have to go back to Korea a little after midnight. Around 10 p.m. at night, Chase retreated to his room and Ning decided to make a magic circle there right away. He found a small closet that wasn't being used except for storing some very old items and quickly renovated it to become able to house about 3 people at once. Then, on the floor of the closet, he drew the magic circle. Ning didn't know much about magic circles, except for a few ideas on how they worked. He hadn't had the time to learn them as extensively as he had for summoning circles back in Nulwern, so he instead asked the system to give him the exact design of the circle. He could use chalk to draw the circle, but he decided to go with something that would last a little longer. He dipped a brush into the small jug full of paint and started drawing the magic circle. He could have asked the system to have it drawn, but using his own hands made him feel better when the results eventually showed themselves. You sure you don't need any help? Ely asked. No, I'm fine, Ning said and continued with his magic circle. Ely watched from the side as Ning finished making it within the hour. The magic circle was a giant circle with a 5-pointed star on it. There were multiple inner circles that separated the region around the 5-pointed star, creating gaps where one could draw various symbols. The circles were the base design that denoted the tier of the magic circle based on how many were being used. The symbols determined the intent of the circle itself. All right, it's done, Ning said as he walked out of the closet and looked at the magic circle ready in it. So, we can teleport now? She asked. Well, probably not. For the sake of safety, it's better if we don't use it as it is. Without a properly receiving magic circle, it will end up teleporting us in a small radius around the target location, which I've set to be our house. Ely nodded as she heard that. How large is the radius without a receiving magic circle? It sounds like it's usable if it's not too large. It's about 200 meters, I think, he said. Give or take a couple of dozen. Oh, that's not too bad. I thought it would teleport you hundreds of kilometers away for some reason, Ely said. Our house has that much land, does it not? Yes, it does, but you're not thinking it clearly, Ning said. I said it teleports us in a 200-meter radius, but you keep thinking about it in 2 dimensions. Ely gave a confused look for a second before realizing what he meant. I see, she said. So there is a chance we will appear high in the air, or deep underground. Yes, Ning said. Can't you change that? Make it so it's always the same height? She asked. I can, but I will need a lot larger space to put those symbols in it. As it is now, there is not nearly enough space for anything other than the general location, Ning said. Most of it is covered by symbols that attract mana on its own so that you won't have to have a source to run it passively while receiving people. But it won't help people teleport? They will have to use their own mana? Ely asked. That's the plan, he said. That's the best I could do anyway. I suppose that's not too bad, she said, except for 4 of us. Ning chuckled a little. Safandra won't absorb any mana, but that won't be the same for you 3. At the very least, it won't be the same for you, he said. With time, your body will adapt to the energy and find a way to make use of it. You will be able to use mana. Although he wasn't able to tell how long that would take. The mana did not originate from Earth to begin with anyway. It's all right even if it takes a few years, he thought. All right, let's go back, Ning said. I want to use that magic circle, she said. Sure. Come into the closet then, Ning said and took her in. He closed the closet door from the outside and poured mana onto the circle on the ground. Suddenly, the circle lit up with bluish-white light and spatial forces enveloped the 2 of them. In the next moment, they disappeared. When they reappeared, they found themselves about 3 meters above the tallest tree in the land where they were going to have their house built. Good, Ely said. I was a bit worried that we would appear underground. I didn't want to change my clothes just yet. Well, you might have to, it's already another day here, Ning said. Yeah, I suppose, Ely said. Oh right, here. She handed him something small which Ning took and looked through. It was a bunch of artifacts that she had invented herself with the help of her system, which would aid their house a lot. She wanted it to be added to the building that Ning was going to have to make very soon. I'll see what I can do about it, Ning said. I might just even make the house today itself. Right away? Ely asked, looking at the area. There's so much to clean up still. I can do that, Ning said. You don't have to, Ely said. I can have Night, Blue, and Sorless help me clear up this place. When you return, just make the house itself. I suppose that works too, Ning said. Ely nodded and reached out with her divine sense to find the three beasts back at home. They had already returned from Germany. She called them all to come to help her, and within a few minutes, they were all there. Ning gave a small idea of which places to clear up and which to leave, and they started working on it. As for Ning himself, he left for his meeting with the director regarding the magic circles. Hey Director Sung, it's been a while, Ning said as he walked into the director's office. Been a while? But we only just met yesterday, the old man said. Huh? Oh right, Ning said as he shook his head. I forgot. I've been awake for 2 days since we last met, so it has been a while for me. You haven't slept for 2 days? How? The man couldn't help but ask. No need to worry about that, Ning said. Anyway, did Germany contact you regarding the dungeon clearance? Oh yes, they did. They are very thankful to you for that, the director said. They have transferred your payment over, which we've put in your account. That's good, Ning said. Also, what about my land transfer? Is it in my name yet? My people are already clearing it up. It has been started, but we had to wait for you to show up for the signature and thumbprints. Once you sign them, the land is yours. Great, Ning said and sat down on the couch by the wall. So, about what I wanted to talk with you about. Yes. The director got curious. What was it that made you contact us? I want to teach you guys, or at least some of you guys, about magic circles, he said. Magic circles? The old man gave a confused look. What's that? It's a circle that can be drawn, which when activated through mana can do certain things, Ning said. Imagine it like programming, but with magic. The old man was still a bit confused. I don't think I understand what exactly you are talking about, he said. Let's see. He looked around the room and quickly walked up to the director's desk. He took a pen and a small blank notepad and started drawing on them. The director was curious, so he looked at the drawing as well. Ning took half a minute to finish the drawing and tore off a small piece of a different paper and placed it on top of the circle he had drawn. What is this? The old man couldn't help but ask. He was more plagued by confusion than curiosity at this point. You can use mana, right? Ning asked. He could sense the old man's A rank in mana usage, so it was almost unnecessary to even ask. Yes, I can, the old man said. What about it? Use your mana on that drawing I just made, Ning said. Use my mana? The old man asked. He had never done that before. The only time he ever used mana was to use spells, but using mana by itself was not a concept he was familiar with. Just focus on it. Think of the energy in your body leaving through your hands and you're more or less there already, Ning said. The old man was still confused, but he did as asked. He took a deep breath and thought of sending his mana out through his palm and into the piece of drawing on the paper. Suddenly, he sensed something leaving his body. At the next moment, a gust of wind blew out of the drawing, blowing away the small piece of paper that was on it. What? The old man asked with an incredible look on his face. Where did the air come from? From the circle, Ning said as he pointed at the circle on the paper. You can point it towards yourself and see how well it sends out air. Be sure to not let the paper fold. It must be as flat as possible for maximum usability. The old man was way too curious to not follow Ning's orders. He took the paper and placed it on his palm so as to not have it blow itself away. Then he used his mana. The paper suddenly blew out air, surprising him and making the clothes flap crazily. The old man felt the hand holding the paper be pushed back as well. He used his free hand to try and block the air, and in doing so cut off the mana input into the circle, turning it off. The air stopped blowing and everything was back to normal. The man heaved a few deep breaths as he stared into nowhere for the entire time. How does this work? He asked. You can use the circles to have it do everything you can possibly think of, Ning said. You can even use high-grade spells if you know the design of the circle. It is basically a replacement for spells not used by humans. So long as one knows the design, anyone can become any type of mage. The old man didn't smile learning this, instead, he feared. He couldn't imagine this in the hand of the public. Especially those that might have some nefarious intents. If anyone could use the circles, anyone could use it, and if anyone could use it, finding criminals would be a nightmare. Are you planning on teaching us this? The old man asked. No, Ning said. I'm planning on teaching everyone this. No, the old man said. You cannot teach it to the public. This has to be very confidential knowledge and not everyone should know this. Ning chuckled. Relax, when I said everyone, I mean every country, he said. Also, I won't teach them everything. I will just teach them about the existence of the magic circle and give them a few designs. I will not be teaching anyone everything. Oh, how about just teaching Korea? The man asked. You don't have to teach the whole world. Or even if you do, it can be taught a bit later. Ning shook his head. Humanity is at a peril right now and you still think about improving your own country? He asked. I thought I made it clear before, I don't care about any of the countries, not China, not Korea, nothing. All I'm doing here is helping the world fight back against these invaders. If not for that, you wouldn't even be seeing me right now. Sorry, you're right. I shouldn't be thinking this way, the director apologized. So, what should we do? What should I do? Your first task is to find out who else can know about this, and at the same time contact every country on Earth and tell them you have this information. Once you're all there, I will reveal this information, and you can all use it however you want to, Ning said. Got it, the director said. It will take at least a day to contact them all, maybe even more. Take your time, Ning said. I have some stuff of my own to do. Once I'm done, I will teach them all. Now that he was done talking, Ning got out of the Department of Dungeon Defense. However, before he could find a slightly uncrowded place to teleport away, someone came up to him. He looked to the side and was surprised to see Lee standing in front of him. Hey, brother Lee. What's up? Ning asked. Is it true? Lee asked. You will have to be more specific, Ning said. Our gods. Are you really empowered by 5 of them? He asked. Ning smiled a bit. What do you think? He asked. Lee became solemn for a moment before saying. My God has only ever taken me in as his apostle, and he prides himself in that. He says how others disperse their powers into weaker beings and ends up having weaker followers, which is why he despises having multiple apostles under him, he said. So, tell me, are you really telling the truth? Ning thought for a bit. If you do know your God so well, why don't you ask him? He asked. Surely the apostle he prides in can get an answer or two from him, right? Lee frowned a bit but otherwise said nothing in retort. If you're not going to say it then it's all right. I didn't come here expecting an answer anyway. I was just surprised, he said. Well then, see you later, Ning said and walked away. He went over to the place where the deeds to his land were. An employee there showed him the way and gave him the file to sign on. Ning signed the place and left his thumbprints as well. Once done, he was now officially an owner of land in Korea. He took the deed and went back to his uncle's place. His uncle and grandmother were beyond happy to see that he now had his own land. They were truly very proud of him and started saying how much they wished his mother and father were here to see it all. In some ways, Ning wanted that too. However, it had been way too long for him without them, so he was fine even without them. He was about to go back to Ely when his uncle stopped him. Hi-Ah told me to tell you about meeting her guild master. Apparently, you said you would but then disappeared, his uncle said. Kim Min-soo. Oh right, I completely forgot, Ning said. I was supposed to meet with her yesterday, but the Germany job took away my attention. Thank you for the information, uncle. I will go there right away. Also, both Hi-Ah and Young-hee will likely be staying at my place, so you will have to make your own meal, Ning said. I will send Safandra and a few others back, so you most likely won't be out of company anyway. It's fine, we will be fine without them, his uncle said. But, your place? You only got the land, right? Oh, there's a house there already, Ning said. I simply got the house along with the land. Oh, I see, his uncle said. I would love to see the house. Not yet, Ning said. We need to do some furnishing, which is why I'm taking the 2 with me. Once it is done in a day or 2, I'll take both you and grandmother there to stay with me for a while. I would love that, his uncle said. Ning left the house and went over to the White Devil Guild. He didn't even bother with the reception and directly teleported to the top floor where he knew Kim Min-soo was alone. He knocked on the door. Who? Her voice came from inside. It's me, Ning, he said and waited. The door opened with a sudden jerk and the girl inside stared at him with a confused look. "No one told me you were here," she said. "That's because no one knows it yet," Ning said. "I didn't want to bother with the other folks." She gave him a weird look before stepping aside. "Come on in." Ning walked in and sat on the sofa in a comfortable stance while she went over to her desk close to the window and shuffled through something. A few seconds later, she brought out a file and threw it softly on the table in between them. Ning looked down at the file and asked, "What's this?" "This is what you came for, didn't you?" she asked. "Your contract. I assume that you still want to join the guild." "Yes," Ning said. "That is why I came." He took the file and flipped it around a bit. His eyes moved through the file at incredible speed, reading through every bit of information on it. "I see," he said. "I'm fine with most of these things, except I won't involve myself in these team-building exercises. My time is way too valuable for this." Kim shrugged. "That's just there for formality's sake. We put that in every contract. You don't have to join," she said. "Well, if that's the case, then I am okay with this," he said and signed it before Kim could say anything else. She wanted to negotiate his salary and see if he liked it or not, but for some reason, he wasn't bothered by it at all. "So, are we done here?" Kim looked through the contract and nodded. "Do you have any form of identification we can use?" "If possible, your hunter ID," she said. "Oh, right. Here you go," Ning said as he pulled the ID card from his storage. Kim looked at his pulling it out from his storage and couldn't help but ask, "Is that your system or because you are now an apostles of the five gods?" "It's a secret," Ning said with a smile. "You can ask your god for the answers though." The girl didn't say anything. Bothering her god for something like this was an easy way to get your powers taken away. "All right, since we are done here, I will be leaving," Ning said. "When is the next dungeon run for me?" "I will let you know," Kim said. "Good, here's my number. You can call me anytime." Ning left the number that could reach him and walked out of the room. He left as quickly as he came, giving Kim a feeling that everything that had happened just now was an illusion. Ning went over to find Hai-Ah in a meeting where they made plans on how to take down a dungeon. The person at the front was teaching all sorts of things about the dungeons and the monsters they were going to be facing soon. He waited for part of the explanations to be over before calling Hai-Ah outside. "Come to this place tonight instead of going home," he told her as he handed a small piece of paper. "What's this?" She looked at the location on the paper. It was at least 10 kilometers away from her house, so she was slightly confused. "You'll find out when you go there," he said. "Bring your brother too. I've already told Uncle." Hai-Ah was even more confused now, but she still nodded. After that was over with, Ning left the building, going directly back to Ely and the others. He appeared in the air and looked down at the flat land that had nothing on it, not even a single extra pebble. "Wow." Ning couldn't help but say. "You all did an amazing job." "It's nothing," Blue said with a proud look on his face. He was incredibly happy with his master's words. "Master, are you going to make a dungeon here or a cave? Make something big, okay? You should keep all your treasures there," Sorlus said. "I'm making no such thing," Ning said. "It's just going to be well, I was going to say a normal house, but it's not going to be normal at all." "Well, whatever you make it great," Safandra said. "If possible, I want my own room." "Everyone is going to get their own room," Ning said. "There's going to be more than enough of it." "So, when do we get started?" Ely asked. "How do you even start?" "For starters, bring out the artifacts you have prepared," Ning said. Ely quickly brought out all the artifacts that she had given him a list of before. Ning looked at the pile of artifacts and nodded. "These are all, right? Or do you have something else that you haven't finished making?" he asked. "No, this is all," she said. "Good, now step back," Ning said. Everyone stepped away for Ning to do his thing. Ning looked at the artifact and then his blueprint and closed his eyes. Blue, Knight, Sorlus, and Safandra waited for Ning to do something. The land was probably going to rise. Bricks were going to appear and start being placed around on their own. They knew about his system and so they were ready to see something that even an immortal like them wouldn't have normally seen. Even Ely was a little excited. "Do it," Ning said. Instantly, a bright light appeared in front of them and the air in the area was pushed out from something. The light lasted barely a second at most, and when it was gone, in its place, a house had appeared. They all looked at the 4-story tall building in front of them and asked, "That's it?" Ning looked at them curiously. "What else did you want?" he asked. "I don't know," Safandra said. "A bit more of a spectacle than just this." "I was ready to watch it being made like the work of a master craftsman," Blue said. "Having it appear suddenly, it's not very fun." "Why do you need fun?" Ning asked. "It's a house, it's our house. Be more excited, or I'm going to take away your rooms." "Master, this is amazing," Sorlus said suddenly. Yes, this is fantastic," Blue quickly nodded. "He's saying something right for the first time, Master." "I quite like this too," Knight said, "although, never mind. Let's go see the inside quickly," Safandra said before anyone else. "Yes, let's go see what it's like inside," Ely said. "He's been keeping the design a secret from me too, so I'm very curious how it came out to be." There was no gate to the house, just a few sets of steps that directly led to the front door. The entire house was mostly white in color, and the chocolate-colored door gave the perfect contrast. The front door led to an open space where the main stairs of the house were located. Taking the stairs led one to the upper floors, each of which had 6 rooms in total, all of which were bedrooms. The lower floor had open rooms with no doors, and that was where the living room, the kitchen, and the dining area were located. Everyone looked around in awe as they went through the rooms on the lower floors. Then, when they learned that their rooms were on the upper floor, they went there too. Sorlus and Safandra were especially happy to find out that each of their rooms had a TV of their own that they could watch whenever they wanted to. Ning showed Ely the rest of the house, including the underground space that he was going to have to immediately use. "There are still a few more things left to add," he said. "But at the very least, this is now our house." Hya and Young-hee arrived by the gate and were a little surprised. Hya took her phone and was about to call Ning, but before she did, the gate opened and a voice spoke through a speaker. "Come in." Hearing Ning's voice, they drove in. The 2 siblings were immediately surprised to see the massive trees on either side of the freshly paved road that led to the mansion at the end of the pathway. Hya parked the car towards the left and the 2 of them walked out with awe on their face. Ning hadn't explained properly where they had to go, so she wasn't expecting much. However, even if she would have expected something, this would not have been it. The door opened and Ning walked out. "You're finally here. So late," he said. "Sorry, the dungeon run took a bit longer than we planned," Young-hee said with an absent look on his face. "Brother, is this a hotel or something? Or maybe a place you rented?" "No, it's neither of those things," Ning said as he turned around. "I own this place." The 2 siblings looked at each other and back at Ning. "No way. You're kidding, right?" Ning chuckled. "Do you think I can't own such a place?" he asked. "Wait, seriously?" Young-hee asked. "You come back one day and you own such a massive mansion?" "Why not?" Ning asked. "What's the use of having so much money if I can't even do such a thing?" "That's right," Young-hee said. "Let's go in, I want to see the house." Ning led in the excited siblings and gave them a tour of the house. Their voice echoes through the hallways and rooms as they made their way everywhere. "You need to buy some furniture, brother. It's too empty without it," Young-hee said. "No need to hurry," Ning said. "We only just got the house. Everything else will come in due time." Ely walked out of the kitchen with a ladle in her hands. "Ah, you 2 are here," she said. "You must be hungry. Come, I've created an excellent meal for you too." "Oh, yes. I'm very hungry, sister-in-law," Young-hee said and went on ahead. Hya walked with Ning and walked into the kitchen as well. She smelled the food that was being cooked and couldn't help but think that this was the best smell she had ever smelled in her life. "What exactly are you cooking, sister-in-law?" she asked. Ely thought of answering but decided not to. "It's a sort of curry," she said. "A curry of what exactly? That you will have to find on your own." The 2 siblings fortunately weren't weirded out by the lack of information and waited for the food to be served. Ely handed them a hefty serving of the curry she was cooking and put some for herself and Ning as well. They sat down to eat and both she and Ning kept a close eye on the 2 siblings. Young-hee was the first one to dig his spoon into the food and take a bite of it. He was a little hesitant when the food entered his mouth, but when the taste settled in, his eyes went wide. "Holy shit. This is good," he shouted all of a sudden. The curry had a burst of flavor that he had never experienced before. The bits in the curry had practically melted on his tongue, so all he tasted was the smooth texture and flavor, and that was amazing. He dug in once more, and seeing that Hai-Ah got curious as well, she too took a spoonful of curry and ate it. As soon as she did, her eyes went wide with surprise as well. Holy crap, he wasn't lying, she said softly. After that, the two of them didn't stop for a single second as they ate everything. Ning and Ely smiled as they watched the two eat. While they did, the two of them ate as well. Young Hee finished in record time as well. Sister-in-law, can I get some more? He asked. Ely smiled, however, she shook her head. You shouldn't eat any more than that, she said. Young Hee was surprised. He wasn't expecting to be refused for seconds. Listen to your sister-in-law, Young Hee. This is not a food you can eat too much of, Ning said. At least, not yet. Ah, but this tastes so good, he said. Ning smiled. Just wait a few minutes, you will feel awful soon, he said. Huh? Young Hee was surprised. What, do you mean? Ely quickly finished her meal and placed her bowl in the sink. He walked by Hai-Ah, who was just sitting there with a confused look on her face, and tapped her on the shoulders. Come on, you don't want to be here when it starts, Ely said. Hai-Ah was confused. When what starts? She asked. Ely gave her a wide smile. Your breakthrough. Ning took his younger cousin to one of the bathrooms on the upper floor and made it sit in the bathtub while he filled it with water. You will start feeling a bit of pain soon, prickly pain. Endure it, Ning said. At the same time, your body will also produce a lot of filth. It's normal, so don't get scared. What is happening, brother? Young Hee asked. He couldn't help but be worried. Everyone was being so suspicious after all. Don't worry, your body is accepting qi, so this is normal, Ning said. In the end, Young Hee got into the bathtub as told. Soon, he started grunting in pain and complaining, but it wasn't as bad as Ning was expecting it to be. I see, he thought. Their body is already enhanced with mana, so this bit of qi won't really hurt them much at all. Young Hee was surprised when the black, gooey filth fell out of his body and made the water murky. However, the slight pain he did feel wasn't enough to make him cry out. It took exactly 30 minutes for it all to be over, and when it was, both Young Hee and Hai-Ah had now become cultivators. What is going on with me? Hai-Ah asked, walking out into the living room in her fresh clothes. I feel weird. He says we are now what was it, cultivator? Young Hee asked. Don't worry, I will explain it all, Ning said. Sit down. The two siblings sat on the couch in the brightly lit room and listened to everything Ning explained. Their eyes went wide in shock many times, and many times their mouth opened as they finally understood many things that had confused them at first. So anyone who uses mana is a mage, and anyone who used qi is a cultivator? Young Hee asked. In a sense, yes. But those are just names, and you can call whatever you want, Ning said. All you need to remember is that qi is usually better than mana. Why usually? Hai-Ah asked. Why not always? Well, in instances like Earth where there is both qi and mana, the amount of mana is far too much in comparison to qi, so in this instance, cultivating mana would be better, he said. However, what is best is growing stronger using both. Which is why I decided to turn you two into cultivators. So, I will be stronger now? Young Hee asked. I can get strong like you, brother? Don't expect to get strong like me, Ning said, but you can get strong like her. The two turned to Ely and looked at her in surprise. Sister-in-law is strong? They asked. She's the strongest human on Earth right now, Ning said. Maybe even the entire galaxy. Even compared to you? Hai-Ah asked. Of course not, Ning said. He wasn't a human after all. Anyway, I will give you some information to learn about cultivation. Do so in your free time. For now, I have something else you will need to do. What is it? Young Hee asked. He wondered if there was something else they were going to learn about besides qi today. Just follow me, Ning said and continued walking. Sorlus walked down the stairs and arrived in front of them. You called, Master? He asked. Yes, come with me, Ning said and took him along as well. Hai-Ah and Young Hee were surprised when Ning took them down the stairs. They hadn't expected to go to the underground space just yet. The entire underground space was dark, but the moment they walked in, it glowed bright instantly. There were no bulbs lighting up the place, but rather artifacts attached to the ceiling that used energy from the sun during the day. However, neither of the siblings noticed it at all. Instead, they saw the massive underground space that was far wider than they were expecting it to be. "What is this place?" Hi-Ah asked. "It's very unsettling for some reason." "Ah, don't mind the open space for now. I plan on having a few magic circles built in here. For now, go into that room," he said. They turned to their right to see a door alongside the wall. They weren't expecting that to be a room at all. When they opened the door, the light kicked back in and they saw nearly a dozen different bunk beds in the room, set up in a row like this was some hospital ward or an army camp. "What is this place?" Hi-Ah asked. "This is definitely creepy." Ning didn't say anything and just jumped onto one of the beds. "You all sleep too," he said. They looked around for a bit and slowly got onto the bed and stared at either the other bed on top of them or the ceiling. "What now?" Young-hee asked. Suddenly, the bed or ceiling over them opened up and something dropped, scaring some of them. "Holy crap, that scared me," Hi-Ah said. "What is this now?" The thing that had fallen was a sort of helmet attached to a bunch of wires at the top. "Wear it and close your eyes," Ning told them. He did as he said and wore one over him as well. There was no point in refusing, so everyone wore it and closed their eyes. One moment, they were wondering what was supposed to be happening, and the next, they felt a cool breeze on their face in a grassland that was on a cliff next to the ocean. "What the fuck?" Young-hee shouted all of a sudden. "What the hell is this, brother? Where the hell are we?" Hi-Ah shouted. Ning chuckled a bit for a few seconds as he watched the two siblings freak out a bit. Even Ely was having a bit of fun. Sorlus looked around, not understanding what was going on. However, he did manage to realize something. "Something is wrong," he said. "This world, it's weird." "It is," Ning said. "That's because this a fake world." "Eh, what?" Young-hee asked. "What do you mean fake?" "Have you heard of VR games?" Ning asked. "I have," the young man said as he looked around the world a bit. "No way. Is this a digital space? It looks so real though." "It's because I meant it to be that way," he said. "Is this a game?" Hi-Ah asked. "Are we supposed to be playing something right now?" "No, this is not a game," Ning said. "This is a training space. Something I created just for the two of you so you can grow as a fighter." "Eh, training space?" Young-hee asked curiously. "Yes," Ning said. "Since this is a fake world, you can fight to your heart's content without worrying about death. I have made sure to have the system copy everything from your physical capabilities to your mana and chi amount. Even your spells will only be the ones you can use outside." "So, this is just normal training?" Hi-Ah asked. "We do that in the guild every day." "Yes, but your guild can't teach you what I can hear," Ning said. "So, let's start your training, shall we? And for your first opponent, you will have to fight Sorlus." "We are going to fight Sorlus?" Hi-Ah asked with a surprised look on her face. She wasn't expecting to have to fight with the 12-year-old looking kid as part of her training today. Young-hee was a little hesitant as well. Both of them knew that Sorlus was a strong dragon, but he was always in his human form, so they couldn't help but see him as a young brother to them. Fighting such a young man was not something they were expecting to have to do today, or if ever at all. "Not really fight, no," Ning said. "With the power difference, there won't be much of a fight at all. What you're going to do is die today." Hi-Ah and Young-hee paused a little. "Sorry?" they asked. "You heard me right," Ning said. "You two do not know the extent of the terror the monsters in the upper tier dungeon can hold. So, today you will find out." He then turned around to Sorlus and said, "Revert back to your dragon form and kill them." The two siblings were immediately on guard when they heard that and looked toward Sorlus, ready to fight him. "Are you sure, Master?" he asked. "Don't worry, this is not the real world, so they won't die even if you kill them," said. "In that case, understood." Suddenly, the little boy shined in a bright blue light as his body got larger. Scales appeared all over him and his hands and fingers turned into talons. A tail and two wings grew out of his back while the rest of his body turned blue. When his face changed to that of a draconic beast, His dragon body was finally in view for the two siblings and Ely to see. Let alone the two weak humans, even Ely was surprised by Sorless's size. Sorless wasted no time and opened his mouth as he spewed out water from it. The water came out so fast that it ripped the two siblings to shreds in an instant, killing them despite their defenses. They had no chance of survival against a Sorless that was ready to kill. When the burst of water disappeared, the two of them were gone. Ning waited for a few seconds and the two appeared in a bright light. However, compared to before, they weren't standing at all. They were crouched on the floor, shivering in fear as the pain from dying filled them with dread they didn't even know they could feel. Ning walked over to them and pat them over a couple of times to assure them that they were all right. "So, how did dying feel?" he asked. Hai-Ah tried to answer, but she couldn't find the will or the ability to speak at all. The best she could voice was the clattering of her teeth. Ning gave a warm blanket to comfort his two cousins and waited until they could finally speak. It took a few minutes, but Young Hee was the first to speak again. "Why did you kill us?" he asked. Hai-Ah looked at Ning for an answer as well. "As I said, you need to know how terrifying the higher tier monsters are and how easily you can die if you don't pay any attention," Ning said. But why did you make us feel the pain of dying? It hurts so bad," Hai-Ah said. "Well, there's no point to this if you don't feel the pain," Ning said. "Only by feeling this pain will your body learn to avoid such a thing again. While I'm trying to teach you how scary these beasts can be, what I'm ultimately trying to teach you is fear," Ning said. "Fear? Fear of what? Death or the monsters?" Hai-Ah asked. Ning shook his head. "I'm trying to teach you to fear fear itself," he said. "You're now a cultivator and very soon you will be in sulfur monosulfide ranked mage. Your power will grow to such an extreme height in such a small period of time that it is impossible for either of you to not overestimate yourself. So, for the next however many days it takes, you will train here to try and understand just how weak you are and how no matter how strong you get, you will die every time you have to fight the beasts from those stronger dungeons," Ning said. The two siblings took a deep breath. Do we have to die each time?" Hai-Ah asked. "Of course," Ning said. "How else will you learn the severity of the difference in strength between you and the others?" "This is a virtual world, right?" Young Hee asked. "Can we at least not feel pain? There should be a setting for that." "I can remove all pain," Ning said. "But I will keep it all. Besides, it's set at a capacity where you will barely remain sane. If you were to truly feel the pain of dying, you will go mad. To die over and over and over and to still retain your sanity, only a madman could do such a thing." "Why do we have to feel pain?" Young Hee complained. "We know we will die, is that not enough?" "Is it enough?" Ning asked. "If you don't feel the pain, then will dying have any effect on you? Will you be sitting here, unable to move just now if you didn't feel the pain and fear from having died? There are stories of people in dangerous jobs dying stupidly because they were so used to the job that the danger became an everyday part of their life and they started ignoring the danger," Ning said. "If you die over and over to someone stronger than you and you no longer fear that, you will die stupidly against someone stronger than you too. Do you want that?" The two quickly shook their head. "Good," Ning said. "Now that you understand what is going to happen, I reckon you are ready to die again, yes?" "What? Wait, no." Before the two of them could finish their sentence, Ning gave Sorless the gesture and he killed the two siblings one more time. After a couple of deaths, Ning asked Sorless to not kill the two immediately again. He wanted them to at least fight back to see just how strong they would be against a dragon like him. Sorless agreed and let the two siblings attack him. Hai-Ah did not find it hard to attack Sorless at all. Whether it was because of his current size, or the absolute disparity he had shown them that led to them being in such despair, she wanted to hurt him too. Her fingers suddenly crackled with lightning as a massive bolt of electricity flew towards Sorless in the blink of an eye. It struck his thick hide, but the dragon scales were too strong for Sorless to feel any pain at all. Sorless let out a weak attack that was barely strong enough to hurt the two siblings but not enough to kill them. Young Hee jumped forward and moved his arms in a circle as he suddenly created a barrier in front of him. Ning saw a magic circle flash right before the barrier was created, but no one else seemed to care much about that. After all, it was quite an ordinary visual for them all as most spells did create a momentary magic circle. If one could draw that circle, They could use that exact same spell despite not having the talent towards that category of the spell. Ning thought of learning the designs for magic circles in his spare time if he could. He watched the three of them fight for a while and in the end left the virtual world to let them fight on their own. Once he was out, Ning made his way over to the vacant underground of his house where he was going to draw some teleportation circles. Ning got himself a bucket of paint and a brush and started drawing. He made 2 teleportation circles, each of which was about 3 meters in diameter. It could easily hold up to 8 people to teleport at once, and that was enough for everyone in his household to teleport over. It took him about an hour to properly finish making it all, and by the time he was done, it was midnight already. Ely walked out of the room she was in and walked up to Ning. "You're done?" she asked. "Yes, I made both," Ning said. "Which is which?" Ely asked as she was unable to tell exactly which formation she was to use. "Oh, the left one is for your brother's house, and the right one is for Uncle's house," Ning said. "You want to go there right now?" Ely nodded. "It's 4 p.m. there, so I want to bring him here for the night to help him train there. Maybe even help him become a cultivator. We still have the leftover curry after all," she said. "Sure," Ning said. "Step on, I will send you there." Ely nodded and walked onto the paint that had dried already. She stepped inside and Ning poured his chi onto the circle. The magic circle lit up and she vanished. Ning spread his divine sense that easily reached France within a couple of seconds. "You got there easily?" he asked. "Yes, I'm inside the closet," Ely said as she unlatched the door and walked out. "It seems he's in his guild right now. I'll wait around a bit, see you later." "All right, have fun," Ning said and went back to the room where they were all inside their virtual world. He went inside the world and watched them continue their fight. Neither of the brother or sisters realized just how many times they had died, but little by little they were learning to move even in the face of death. When Sorless attacked this time around, they were at least able to move a bit far away, even if they were eventually killed in the end. When the 2 of them came back, they were able to stand up immediately even while their bodies shivered in fear of their own death. Ning arrived in front of them and helped them up. "Sorless, you can rest now. You don't have to fight anymore," he said. "Okay, Master," Sorless spoke in his gruff voice. Ning taught him how to leave this world and he went out. Now, only 3 of them were remaining in this current world. "Let's see just what you have learned," Ning said. "You will fight me now." The 2 of them looked at each other and back at Ning. "Aren't you supposed to be stronger than Sorless, brother?" Young-hee asked. "I feel like we will just die." "Do I look like someone who is capable of killing my own junior cousins?" Ning asked as he shook his head. "You 2 must think I'm a monster." The 2 didn't know what else to say. He had just ordered his dragon to kill them a dozen or more times after all. "Stop dilly-dallying and come fight me. I want to see how much more improvement you 2 need," Ning said. The 2 didn't hesitate any more and came to fight Ning. Lightning attacks struck Ning while barriers covered them. Ning looked at their fighting styles and learned from them. He moved through their attacks, taking absolutely no damage as he appeared beside them. He punched through the barrier, leaving Young-hee stunned. At the same time, he grabbed Hai-ah by the throat and choked her for a few seconds before dropping her to the floor. "Tisk, tisk, tisk." Ning clicked his tongue. "You 2 need to be able to react faster than this. I was so slow too." "Young-hee, is making barriers all you can do?" Ning asked. "What about fighting back? I broke your barrier, but you weren't able to do anything at all. And you, Hai-ah, you need to have something defensive of your own as well. You can't rely on your brother's barrier alone. Learn some defensive spells too," he said. The 2 nodded in a daze. Ning shook his head. "Start all over again. I will have to teach you quite a lot, it seems." A few hours into teaching the 2 siblings how to fight, Ning stopped their training and sent them out of the virtual world. They were disoriented when they came out of that world and took a moment to remember to unplug the headgear they were wearing. The gear went up into its space on top of them, and the 2 siblings walked out. "You will have to train physically too," Ning said. "It's good to give you instinct virtually, but if that won't translate to muscle memory, it won't be as good as we hope it will be." "So, do we train again?" Young-hee asked. "No, not today," Ning said. "It's already 4 in the morning, and while your body has been sleeping for the past 6 hours, your mind has not. So, you will have to go rest your mind too." Once you have a bit of cultivation and your mental state is improved, we can use full nights to train, he said. The two siblings nodded as there wasn't anything else they could even think to do. Ning was going to teach them how to get better, then they were going to accept it full-heartedly. Ning showed the two of them to the guest rooms on the third floor where they went to sleep. After they were gone, Ning went to the living room and opened the TV there. He watched as he waited, and just an hour later, Ili returned, this time with her brother. Ning sighed. He had been waiting for this, but for some reason doing so much at once felt pretty exhausting. He had always done many things back to back, but somehow the difference in the tasks was making him feel burnt out. He needed to rest a bit to reset, but rest didn't seem like a luxury he could afford just yet. Should he open up a portal and leave for some distant planet where he could live 5 years and come back in 5 days? No, that was way too drastic of a move. He needed to do something simpler. Just then, someone called him. Since the call was in the system, he easily saw the name of the caller. He was a little surprised and accepted the call. Director Sung? Why are you calling me at such an eunice? Oh, thank God you're awake. The director's voice came from the other side. Ning, we need your help. Can you come right now? Ning's eyes narrowed. Is this an emergency? He asked. Sort of, the director said. I just got a call from the Prime Minister saying that his wife has gone into a coma due to mana poisoning. He's freaking out right now and is asking for anyone that can help. I have a report saying that you can cure these sorts of illnesses, so I was hoping you could help. I can't really heal them, but I can get rid of them for a year or two, Ning said. Tell the Prime Minister I will be there right now. I will, the director said. Do you need the address? No need, Ning said and ended the call. Once the call was over, he stood there for a moment as he was reminded of some other things he had to do. He massaged his head as he remembered about the hundreds of thousands of people that were waiting for him to heal their mana poisoning. Fortunately, he was reminded of it so directly. If not, he would have spent weeks doing his own thing before getting to that problem. I can't go heal them right now though, he thought. I still need a bit more before I can reach SSS rank, and then go to the tier above it. That was the tier he needed to be to use the mass healing spell that cured the mana poisoning. Ili walked into the living room with her brother, who was in a daze looking around. He still couldn't figure out just how they were in a new house all of a sudden. After all, just a minute ago he was inside his closet with his apparently reborn sister. I need to go somewhere. I will be back in, well, I don't know, Ning said. It might take a few minutes. Sure, Ili said. I will give him some food and then have Blue or Night help me with the rest. Ning nodded. All right, see you in a bit. He teleported out of the room, surprising Chase once again. He quickly looked down at Ning's feet and didn't see any sort of drawings there. If there was nothing there, then how was he teleporting? Why did none of this make sense at all? Come on, brother. I've kept you from eating long enough, Ili said and dragged her brother to the kitchen. Ning appeared outside a very high security mansion while the world was still in shadows, but the sky was getting brighter. The moment he appeared, the guards outside the gates immediately pointed their guns at him. However, Ning wasn't scared at all. He simply pointed his fingers and the guns pointed away from him, out of the guards' control. I'm here to see the Prime Minister about his wife's illness, Ning said and waited at the gate for the guards to do something. Someone picked up a small communicating device and called the house, where they were quickly told to affirm that it was Ning and then let him in. The guards squinted their eyes and pointed flashlights at him and finally realized who they were looking at. My apologies, sir. We didn't recognize you, they said, bowing at the waist multiple times. Ning chuckled a bit and waved his hands. No need to apologize, you were just doing your job. One of the guards showed him the way into the mansion, and very soon Ning arrived in front of a nervous man who Ning didn't recognize from his face, but from his importance in the hallway. Sir Prime Minister? He asked. I am here to help. Hi, I'm Park Woo-young. Nice to meet you, Apostle Ning. The Prime Minister gave a shaking hand for him to shake. Ning shook it firmly and asked, where's the patient? Right here, with the doctors. The Prime Minister gestured towards the room next to him and Ning walked in. As soon as he was in, he was very much surprised to see the lack of anything in this room. A room with a patient should have been clean and with open ventilation for fresh air. However, the room was full of unnecessary bookshelves and tables that had gathered dust, and there weren't even any open windows in the room. The windows that were there were behind bookshelves and were completely closed. There was at least an AC, but that alone wouldn't be able to prove a lot of natural light and fresh air both the room and patient would need. Why are you keeping the patient in such a terrible room? Ning asked with an angry tone in his voice. Someone who is in constant pain from the mana poisoning should be kept in a proper room with good airflow and light. If you can't even do that, at least send her to a hospital where she can be taken care of. The Prime Minister and the various doctors there were flinching at his voice. The doctors said nothing, but the Prime Minister spoke. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't know that was what you had to do. I will immediately have another room ready. Ning nodded. She must have been in pain for so many days, even months. At least give her some relaxation in the place you keep her, he said. The Prime Minister, who was about to give orders to his men, suddenly paused. No, my wife wasn't ill for months or even days. She fell ill today, or yesterday rather, at night. Ning looked around with a confused look of his own. What do you mean she fell ill last night? He asked. She has mana poisoning, right? That means she became ill months ago. No, she just fell ill last night, the Prime Minister said. It's been, maybe 8 hours since she fell ill. Definitely not months. Ning frowned. So, how do you know it is mana poisoning? He asked. The Prime Minister gave a blank look for a second and pointed toward the doctors. The doctors, who were trying to keep their heads away from Ning's anger, suddenly came face to face with it. The machine says there's mana clumped up in her body. That's why we said she has mana poisoning, one of them said. Ning walked over. But mana poisoning doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. The patient grows weak and finally falls into a coma after months, he said as he checked the Prime Minister's wife. Why, yes. But what else would this be, sir? One of them asked. These are clear signs of mana poisoning. Ning frowned. That it is, he said. But only the signs are that of mana poisoning. The illness itself isn't. The doctors stepped aside as Ning did a thorough test of her illness. A few moments later, he found the problem. Somehow, she had a bit too much mana in her body that was trapped inside her mana circuits, not moving even a single inch. What surprised him the most was the fact that her mana circuits were fully formed, not half-formed like the people that were normally a victim of mana poisoning. Ning frowned. Can't I just take away this mana then? He reached up to her stomach and placed his hands there as he started absorbing the mana. The mana threatened to not leave at all, but Ning's pull was too strong for it to not move despite how badly it was dislodged in there. After a few seconds, it came out of her body, entering into him, empowering him by quite a lot. It was akin to taking in 3 sulfur monosulfide ranked mana cores at once. Once he was done, he moved away. Test her again, Ning said. The doctors nodded and got to work. Ning waited for a bit for them to give out their surprised exclamations and notify the Prime Minister that she was fine. After a bit of rest, she would come out of her coma. I see, the Prime Minister took a deep breath. Thank you, Apostle Ning. It's all right, Ning said. Now that she is fine, I will be taking my leave. Wait, don't you want anything in return? The Prime Minister asked. Ning shook his head as he walked away. I didn't help to expect something else in return, he said as he waved them goodbye. He returned back to his house and called the director. Ning? What's up? Did you go to the Prime Minister's house? The director asked quickly. Yes, I did. She wasn't mana poisoned like you said. Something else was the problem, Ning said. I healed her regardless, so she will be fine. Oh, thank God, the director said. Now that she is fine, he will at least be able to attend tomorrow's meeting. Due to your performance, he should easily accept your proposal to distribute the knowledge of magic circles. Oh, is he the one you must get permission from? Ning asked. Yes, the director said. Then it's a good thing I got on his good side. If he had remained helpless with his wife in coma. Ning's voice trailed off as something struck him. I'll call you later. He ended the call without hearing anything in return and put on a frowning face. Was that intentional? He asked his system. Did someone put mana into her body to make her sick so the Prime Minister wouldn't attend tomorrow's meeting? You're smart. A voice spoke suddenly into Ning's ear from far away. I thought my plan was watertight, but I didn't expect you to be capable of healing her so easily. I underestimated a weak human's reliance on others. Ning looked in the direction of where the voice was coming from, far, far away. And which constellation might I be speaking to? He asked. I am called Briss. Briss, I see, Ning said with a thoughtful look. You have an apostle in Mexico and Ghana, don't you? What are you doing here in South Korea? And why are you hurting people? Hurting? No, the constellation said. I do not hurt people. If I wanted to watch them get hurt, I wouldn't have appointed apostles to help your world. I simply wanted a distraction, but you got rid of it way too quickly, didn't you? Distraction? To stop me from teaching them about magic circle? Ning asked. Yes, Briss said. Where did you even learn it? Ning ignored the question. Why do you want me to not teach them about magic circles? He asked. He couldn't find any obvious consequence of teaching magic circles to humans at all. At least, not from what he was going to be teaching. Unless, what will it take you to not teach them about magic circles? Briss asked. Ning gave a smirk towards the faceless godlike being who could peer through space to look at him. Are you worried that humanity would advance far too quickly for your tiny pawns to no longer seem so unique? He asked. The moment the apostles no longer appear as powerful and out of reach as they are now, you are afraid the people will lose faith in you. Given the context, it does make sense why you would be so afraid. Afraid? I don't fear anything, Briss said. If my plan fails, I will simply stop and wait for the apocalypse to begin. So you will join the other side? Ning asked. Join the ones that are waiting for the world to end before it's their time to shine. He wasn't very angry hearing that. That simply means I have to stop it from ever getting to that point, Ning said. With me stopping all the Tier 6 dungeons, there will never be one that will grow strong enough to turn into an actual portal. Do you still want to wait for that? Briss didn't answer for a few seconds, leaving the morning silence lingering for a while before Ning got an answer again. If that doesn't work out, I will simply go to another world. Your galaxy has plenty anyway, he said. Yeah, but not all of them have the apocalypse like ours, do they? The ones that do have some are orchestrated by other constellations, which makes it impossible for you to go to that planet, Ning said. Besides, I know how useless constellations are. You only want to sit and reap benefits. This is way too late for you to start sowing for anything. Briss didn't not answer again, but Ning could feel the anger from that thing. He wasn't intending to, but he had managed to rile up this constellation enough so that he was actually angry towards Ning. His anger became very apparent when he spoke again. This is your last warning. If you don't stop what you are doing, I will group up with the others and kill you. You may have killed Strixus using some means. I am willing to bet you cannot do the same again. At the very least, you can't do the same to multiple one of us at once. Ning felt a pang of fear in his heart too. That was something he had been worried about. He had talked with his system and he had gotten some rather unfortunate answers. The system was only capable of linking to one will at a time. This meant that in a battle against multiple wills, he could only kill them one at a time. And depending on the amount of energy they had, the time varied. Still, Ning had a card to play in this situation. Do you know what I will say to the humans when I help them understand magic circles? Ning asked. I will tell them that all of this stuff was taught to me by my 5 gods, the one you surely know I'm in an alliance with. With such recognition from the world, they would certainly like it a lot, and in return, they will fight alongside me if you ever team up with others to attack me, Ning said. Also, even if you bring so many that I will certainly die, I will make sure to take you along with me. How does that sound? Still want to fight? Ning made sure to not let it be known that he was immortal. That was akin to telling the constellation that he was a host of the energy system. With how wanted that system was throughout the multiverse, he would immediately be taken and, figuratively and literally dissected to be learned from. This is your last warning, Briss said, and then his aura vanished. Ning could no longer sense him at all. He continued smiling for a few more seconds, but after realizing that Briss was truly not looking at him anymore, he finally dropped the act and frowned. This is bad, he thought. He had been hoping to move under the constellation's attention for a while so he could do the things he wanted to do, but it seemed he had brought himself directly in front of them. The other 5 constellations weren't going to help him when war broke out against him, and he knew that. He only hoped the bluff would keep the others from acting rashly. Given how cowardly these wills were, he wasn't worried about that aspect. How much more energy until I can get 2 of them? Ning asked his system. For both of them, it will cost you 1.3 octillion more energy. And for all 3? He asked. All three require a total of 3.9 octillion energy. Damn souls make everything so expensive, Ning thought to himself. I don't think we have the luxury to sit around anymore. I need to at least work towards one of it. You do have enough energy for one of it? Yeah, I might have to do that, Ning said. Help me find a suitable one. Once we find it, I will leave. The astral chart opened in front of Ning to show the location of that which he could find. The system quickly showed him the location, which was somewhere at the edge of his galaxy. Here? Ning asked with a frowned look on his face. If it was in the Milky Way galaxy, then it was a bad choice. However, he also had to improve his mana. That was an entirely separate problem that he had been intending to solve right now as well. How long will it take me just for this one task? Ning asked, not even bothering to learn about the time it would take to gather the mana. At least a year. Ning's frown only got deeper. What is that in Earth time? He asked. Around 10 days. That was much better, but it was still quite bad. When adding onto that the time it would take for him to be a tier 8 mage, that was even worse. I will need to be away for so goddamn long, he thought to himself. That was on top of the already exhausting amount of tasks he had to do here on Earth. I can't do this all by myself, Ning thought to himself. He wondered what he could do for a few minutes as an idea came to his mind. When he thought of the idea, he couldn't help but smile like a child who had just thought of something mischievous. Let's start a new day with a new me, he thought to himself. System, I'll be needing your help. Ely watched as her brother walked out of the bathroom alongside Blue, who had helped him through his breakthrough. The filth was cleared up and Chase was looking around with a weird look on his face, not understanding what was happening to him. What the hell even was this cultivation bullshit that his apparent sister was forcing him to go through? Was this how he got abducted? Or was this just a way to make him work for the aliens? Good, she stopped speaking and looked in a certain direction with a confused look on her face. Blue was confused too. She quickly walked outside and saw a portal opening right in front of the house that led to somewhere that didn't seem habitable. Outside of the portal, Ning was standing with a curious look on his face. However, even as she walked towards him, Ely could tell something was wrong. Honey? She called out to Ning. Ning turned around. Hey, what are you guys doing out here? We sensed the portal, Ely said as she pointed to the portal in front of her, but even as she said that the portal closed. Why did you open it? I needed something that was there, Ning said. Ely narrowed her eyes. Did you get it? She asked. No, it will take some time, Ning said. But I'm certain I will get it. Blue returned back to the house, but Ely stood there. She could tell something was wrong, but she couldn't tell what it was. She walked close to him and suddenly punched him in the face. Ning tried to dodge the attack, but the attack was too fast for him. Her punch landed on his face, breaking not just his nose, but also a couple of his teeth at the front. Ely, what the hell? Ning cried out as he held his face to stop the bleeding. Ha! Imposter. You're not Ning, she said. My husband wouldn't be injured by such a weak attack of mine. Geez. That's why you attacked me? Ning asked. You couldn't have just asked? I would have told you. Told me what? That you're an imposter? Ely asked. Who are you and where is my husband? Ning's face slowly changed as his wounds reverted back to normal and even his fallen teeth grew back. I'm not an imposter, he said. It is me, your husband. Well, I'm a clone, but that shouldn't change things much. What? You're a clone? She asked with an absolutely gobsmacked look on her face. Where is the real Ning then? Away, Ning said. On an important job, and he didn't think to let me know before leaving? Ely asked. I mean, I am telling you right now, Ning said. There was no point in telling you since I would still be here anyway. That man needs to learn to control his impulses, Ely said while shaking her head. Hey, I'm still here. Don't speak badly about me while I'm in front of you, Ning said. But you're not him, Ely said. I am, Ning said. Just because this is another body of mine doesn't make me a fake. Both my body are made up anyway. So you two are the same? Ely asked. Well, not physically I suppose, Ning said. I don't have a system, so I'm lacking a few skills aside from the ones I put into this body. But I do have all the memories and feelings, so on the inside, I'm essentially the same person, capable of making the same decisions. Also, I'm connected to the body with the system, so that can override me and use my body when needed. Ely was having a slightly hard time understanding what was happening. It didn't seem like a clear case of real and fake as it would usually happen with clones that were made using chi. This was something else. So you are just a worse version of Ning, she asked. In a way, yes, Ning said. And why did you do this? She asked. I had multiple things to do, and doing it all back to back felt exhausting. So, I decided to go do the important tasks far away, while I take care of the less important tasks down here with this body, Ning said. Once I am back, this body will be taken in by the system and all our memories will join together. Ely thought for a bit. What was so important that you needed to leave? She asked. Let's go in, Ning said. I will tell you all about it. So, what exactly can you do? Ely asked the Ning that was in front of her. He had already told her about his plans, so the only thing remaining was for her to wait until he was back from what he was doing. However, they still had things to do, so she needed to know what he could do exactly. I can teleport, regenerate, have the same base body that I can improve if I wanted to, and I have the same knowledge as my other self, Ning said. Are you connected right now? It's hard to say if I'm speaking to a new you or the actual you, Ely said. No, I'm not, Ning said. I'm pretty much independent for now, but I can be taken over by the other me. Just think of myself as a terribly accurate copy of my own intelligence artificially created and put into this body. Well, as long as you don't mess it up, Ely said. So, what do we do now? Well, I have many things to do, but the first thing would be that I need to break through. I'm going to have to improve as much as I can for the next few weeks before Ning comes back, Ning said. Ely sighed. All right. Let's go, she said, and let him do his own thing. Ning started cultivating without waiting, and at the same time he also absorbed mana and spiritual energy in the surrounding. He had spirit stones for chi, so his cultivation speed would be quite fast, and Earth was full of mana, so that wouldn't be very hard as well. However, there wasn't that much spiritual energy for him to draw from the surrounding, so that was a problem. Also, since his 4 spirits were bonded to this other self, he didn't have access to Saphandra, Terra, Void, and Gray's abilities. They were roaming around in the house as he had let them free, but he wasn't going to be able to bond with them either way. The best he could do was try to find a different bond from far away and maybe summon it, but with the lack of spiritual energy on Earth, he had to give up on the idea of reaching any higher than maybe rank 4 with it. So, he decided to focus on cultivation and mana for now. The people in the house, especially Night, Blue, and Ely, were surprised by the constant movement of chi in the air as Ning broke through realm after realm in a matter of minutes. They knew their cultivation method was good and could help one break through very quickly, however, they had only seen that speed with themselves. Now, they were witnessing what happened when you mixed the best cultivation method in the entire universe with a body with the best talent in the entire universe. Chi condensation, foundation establishment, core formation, nascent soul, spirit transformation, and finally ascension. Ning went through them in less than 2 hours. The only reason he was so slow was that the chi refused to leave the spirit stones any faster. Otherwise, he would have entered the upper realm even faster. It was the same with mana as well. He had a very good mana absorption technique, which he run parallel to his cultivation. Due to mana circuits and chi meridians being separate in his body, the same with sea of chi and sea of mana, he was able to perform both sorts of absorption at once. In the 2 hours, he sucked dry the sulfur monosulfide rank mana stone he had left for himself, reaching tier 5 by the time he was done. His mana core was gone, so he brought out some more spirit stones and continued cultivating alone. His body and chi were improving at the same time, so he didn't stop. Or so he thought. Unfortunately, he now had a job he needed to do. So, when someone called him, he had to stop. We have a training session at 11 today. Do you want to join? Kim Min-soo asked from the other side. Is this for the S-rank dungeon I went to before? Ning asked. No, this is for a different one, government-owned. I'm trying to have a secondary team go clear the government-owned one as a favor. I just wanted to know if you were willing to come by for the training or not, she asked. 11, he said as he checked the time. It was already 9 a.m. He had been lost in his own time for a while now. The director and the prime minister still had to set up the global meeting, so he supposed he had some time. Sure, I can do it, Ning said. I might even join as part of the group to clear the dungeon. I don't think that's a good idea, Kim Min-soo said. I just wanted you to come help with the training. Don't worry, I won't make it easy for them, Ning said. He couldn't do that anyway. I just want to fight with a few monsters while they rest is all. Kim sighed on the other side. Sure, she said. Be here by 11 then. We will have a 3-hour training. We will enter the dungeon later around 4 p.m. All right. I will see you at the guild then, Ning said and ended the call. A few people walked into the room where he was cultivating and stared at him. Ning stared back and gave a confused look. What? He asked. How did you cultivate so quickly, Master? Blue asked. I have a talented body, Ning said. I am the best there is. Can I have one too? Blue asked. A talented body? Ning asked and shook his head. It's a me thing. Anyway, stop gawking around. You've seen more fascinating things than this anyway. That was true, but this was just as equally fascinating as well. A mortal breaking through to immortality in just 2 hours. Where's Hai-Ah and Young-hee? He asked. Get them ready, we'll have to go to work any minute now. Ning, Hai-Ah, and Young-hee left for their work. Sister Ely said that we will be able to fly too in the future, is that true? Young-hee asked. How strong are you guys right now? Ning asked as he checked their cultivation bases. Oh right, you didn't get a chance to cultivate, did you? Once you cultivate to Foundation Establishment Realm, you should be able to hover around and move slowly. To actually fly around you will have to be in the core formation realm. And, how long is that going to take us? Young-hee asked. Ning thought for a moment. If you cultivated all night long, you should be able to reach there within the week. Maybe even faster since your body is strong enough to handle the changes already, he said. The two siblings couldn't help but be happy when they heard about it. By the way, brother, why did you join the White Devil Guild? Young-hee asked. That doesn't make sense to me at all. It doesn't? Ning asked. What, did you expect me to join another guild? I'm pretty sure the White Devil Guild is the best one. It is, Hai-Ah said. But I don't think that's what he's asking. He wants to know why you didn't open your own guild. With your ability, people would flock to you far faster and your guild would be one of the best in no time. Ning chuckled a bit when he heard that. I have no desire to start a guild. In fact, doing so would work against what I'm planning, he said. Against what you're planning? Hai-Ah asked curiously. Ning wondered if he could answer the two of them or not. One of the very unfortunate results of leaving behind a clone was that he could no longer sense the constellations when they were focusing on him. As a result, he didn't find it wise to speak freely every word in his mind. Well, I can't go into the specifics, but the goal of my plan is to rid of the dungeons on Earth so humanity no longer has to live in fear every day, Ning said. If I were to start a guild, I would have to find dungeons, make plans to keep the dungeon healthy for a long time, and make use of it, which ultimately isn't what I want. I don't want to keep the dungeons here, he said. I see, Hai-Ah said. But are the dungeons really that bad? They provide us with mana stones and a lot of various rare ores that have been greatly useful. Ning sighed when he heard that. And what if that leads to another dungeon break? He asked. Well, Hai-Ah hesitated. That would be horrible. But we have fighters who can protect us this time around, so I don't think the casualties would be as high as last time. What if the monsters in the dungeon break range from E rank all the way beyond SSS ranks? Is that still okay? He asked. What? Young-hee exclaimed out loud. There are monsters out there beyond SSS rank. Yes, Ning said. The dungeons are too low level for that, but once the SSS rank dungeons appear, you will see. Although, it might be very late by then. The two showed a bit of fear on their faces as they understood the severity of the situation. I see, Hai-Ah said. Then we must destroy the dungeons very soon. Yes, Ning said, but that's not very easy either. Why not? She asked. Well, there are things that don't want you to interfere with those, Ning said. You will find every apostle against the idea of destroying a dungeon. They will use excuses like the ones you just did for keeping them around, but in truth, they're doing what they have been ordered to do. Hai-Ah tried to say something, but Ning interrupted her. Don't speak about it, he said. Never speak about it with anyone. There are forces here that I won't be able to save you against, not yet. Keep your thoughts to yourself. Hi-Ah gulped down her words and put on a blank, but pale face as she continued driving through the highway on the way to the city. Man, I just wanted to work with the two of you, that's why I brought up the idea of starting a guild. I didn't think that. Young-hee stopped speaking as well. They arrived in the city and Hi-Ah dropped off Young-hee before taking Ning over to the guild. Hi-Ah went to do her own thing, while Ning was led to a VIP room to wait out the minutes before the training was to begin. He sat comfortably on the massive sofa, looking up the news on the TV that was inside the room. Just then, a headline popped up on the screen. At the same time, his ring started buzzing, a sign that someone was calling him. He quickly checked and it was the director. He accepted the call. Is this about the new dungeon? Ning asked as soon as he accepted the phone call. You know about it? The director asked with a surprised look on his face. I'm watching the news right now, Ning said. Damn, the news outlets know already? The director couldn't help but ask. However, he seemed to have gotten different news from the other side, so he quickly stopped talking. The news anchors who were giving the normal news immediately changed their state to put on a serious look to give the latest breaking news. We interrupt this segment to give you a breaking news that is coming to us from around the world. Many people have started noting the appearance of new dungeons all around the globe. These new dungeons seem to appear at random places, so we suggest all the people stay away from any you might come across and notify the authorities if you see one around your place. Ning looked at the news segment with a slight awe on his face. So that's your move, huh? He thought. That certainly will make things difficult going forward. The team training for later that day was cancelled as everyone immediately rushed to help the government document the various dungeon gates that were opening up everywhere. People everywhere were advised to stay away from the gates, and while that didn't work entirely, they did manage to keep most of them away from the gates. The daredevils couldn't be stopped as they rushed head first into the dungeons, trying to find glory. Ning walked with Kim Min-soo towards the upper floors of the building to a massive room with screens all around them. Various individuals, all important to the country, were on the screen. The White Devil Guild is available, Kim Min-soo announced as she walked up to one of the screens. Ning stayed a little behind with the vice leader and other important members of the sect. He looked around to see the other 4 apostles and their guild members, some more leaders from smaller guilds, various ministers, generals, Director Sung and the Prime Minister. Does anyone have any idea what is happening? The Prime Minister asked. He looked awful on the screen, not just from the lack of sleep the entire night, but also from the stress of having to hear such terrible news right afterward. What many dead? Su Yun on the screen asked. As of yet, about 40 people that have entered the 13 new dungeons in Korea have not returned. It has been at least 2 hours since the first one is said to have entered, so it is expected that they have died already, the director spoke as he read from a few pieces of paper in front of him. It's also possible that they are inside there still, right? One of the ministers asked. A normal dungeon hunt can go anywhere from half an hour to an entire day. It is, Minister. But one of the groups of people who entered included an S-ranked individual according to my data, and he too hasn't come out in the many hours. If the dungeons are so strong that it takes someone like that such a long time, then the other weaker ones certainly won't be having an easier time, the director said. That's a very negative look on the situation, the Prime Minister said, but I suppose that helps us be realistic with our expectations. What's the dungeon rank exactly? Lee asked. We do not know right now, but our people are finding it out as we speak. We should have the answer by the end of the meeting, the director said. How many dungeons are there exactly? The Speedster Park spoke from one of the screens. There are 18 dungeons that have opened around, 26. Ning spoke up from behind Kim Min-soo. Everyone turned around to look at him with weird looks on their face. How do you know that, Apostle Ning? The Prime Minister asked. I have my people searching the entire country. They already documented the number and location of the dungeons in Korea, Ning said. I've sent them overseas to document the entire planet. Can that be trusted? One of the generals asked. I don't think it matters if we trust the information or not, the director said. His number is higher than our own, so at worst, we will just over-prepare. No harm in over-preparation. Yeah, but we will have to split personnel throughout the various dungeons. That will slow down our time if this turns out to be wrong, the general said. The director had no answer for that. He was right after all. So, he quickly fished out a piece of paper from the pile in front of him and started reading out the places where the dungeons had appeared. Once finished, he asked Ning, "Tell me one dungeon that I did not list that you know. We will check it immediately to make sure your words are true." "Sure," Ning said. "There's one in an abandoned building in Seoul itself. It's a half-constructed building with no paint, warded by sheets of red tins in Yeongdong, Mapo-gu. Since no one goes there anymore, people haven't realized that one has opened there as well." The director immediately sent someone to check there. "All right. Let's talk about what we're going to do now. Whether there are more dungeons or not, we still need to know how to go about the ones that exist," the Prime Minister said. "What else can we do?" one of the generals asked. "Keep about 8 of them, and give the remaining up for auction. That's what we always do with the dungeons." "We have no intention of buying that which has not been explored yet," Bak said. "So, our first task should be to explore one of the dungeons to see what it's about." "Who is volunteering?" Lee asked. Everyone remained silent. No one wanted to be the hero of the day. They would rather survive and be won some other time. If the dungeons were unnaturally strong, then they would be in trouble. "Any of you apostles willing to join? We will have to have at least 2 of you go together to look after yourself," the Prime Minister said. "You should ask Graves what he knows," Ning said, "and if he knows exactly who is involved in this." "Who are involved?" Kim Min-soo gave a weird look. "What do you mean?" "This is not something that just happened to happen," he said. "The various gods are behind this, I just don't know which ones." The White Devils Guild leader couldn't help but give a wide-faced stare at him when she heard that. "Sir, this just came," a voice shouted from the screens, and everyone turned around just in time to see the director receive a note. He stared at the note with so much shock and confusion that the others couldn't help but get curious and a little scared. "Director Sung, what did you just receive?" the Prime Minister asked. The director tried to find his words. "The dungeon's ranks have been determined." "And?" the Prime Minister pushed on him to answer quickly. "And, they are all E-rank dungeons." E-rank? What? Everyone immediately showed their disbelief at the news they were hearing. Even Ning felt that it was wrong. These dungeons were special, created by the constellations to screw with him and his plan to teach people about the magic circles. He wondered how many constellations it took to open so many dungeons. 10? 20? He was sure there weren't many constellations involved in this, but certainly, there was a large enough number to deter the other constellations from either not joining in, or stopping them from doing what they did. "Damn it," he thought. "If only I had more information." He didn't have access to the system to easily get the information he wanted. If he had, not only would he not have to send Blue, Knight, and Ely to go around the world to document every single dungeon, he would have been able to tell what rank each one were and who had made them. However, right now, he had no such ability. He could contact Ning and ask him for some help, but given the amount of time that had passed since he had left, he had most likely already begun working. Since what he was going to have to do was a delicate task that required his full attention and even the system to work along with him, he couldn't just call him and disturb him. He would have to wait 10 days before he could contact him. "Are you sure it's E-rank?" "That sounds impossible," one of the guild leaders said. "That is what has been recorded," the director said. "We will do some more tests and we'll have to figure out if that is correct or not. But the fastest way will be for some of you to go in. Ning and I will go into the one here near our city," Kim Min-soo said. "We will report our findings once we go through with it." "Really, Apostle Kim? Thank you," the Prime Minister said. Ning didn't even get the chance to refuse. "Why did you speak for me?" he asked. "What? Are you not going to go?" she asked. "You are the strongest of us. If you don't go, who will?" Ning got a little frustrated. He was no longer the strongest at all, so he would rather stay low-key for a while. Screw it. What use is staying behind if others die due to my inaction, he thought. "We will get you the answer soon, Prime Minister. Just wait for it," Ning said. "Aside from that, regarding the magic circles, what will happen to that meeting?" "I'm afraid that is going to have to be delayed, isn't it?" the Prime Minister said. "We have something new we need to take care of before we can even think about doing what you said. Besides, your request to gather every country will be impossible for a while since every country will have to go through this." "I see," Ning said with a blank face. They had won. Those damn constellations, especially since Briss had successfully stopped him from spreading the information about magic circles. For now at least, he thought. They must have had to give up a lot of power to make this happen. But still, why E-rank? What does that accomplish? Of course, they were most likely not E-rank dungeons. Or else, those people that entered would have come out by now. Maybe it's a maze. That's why they are stuck in there for so long? Ning thought. There was something fishy going on with the dungeons that he will have to find out soon. I just received another piece of information, the director said. Ning's dungeon did indeed exist. We found the gate in the abandoned building and people are heading there to evaluate it. Dear Lord, so there really are 26 new dungeons? The Prime Minister shook his head as he thought about it. So the number is now up from 58 to 84. Hopefully these new ones really are E-rank dungeons. Otherwise, we won't have many people to spare for them, one of the apostles said. All right. Apostle Kim, Apostle Ning, please prepare your group and go to the dungeon as quickly as you can, the Prime Minister said. Yes, Prime Minister, Kim said and turned around to leave. The vice leader took her place to continue talking with the others while Ning walked out with her. Do you really want to go? He asked her. Huh? Of course, she said. It's not like I have anything to fear. You're going to be with me. You have the power of 5 gods in you, so what's there to worry about? Ning gave a wry smile, not knowing what to say. There was a chance this dungeon run was going to be dangerous. With constellations involved, death was all but confirmed for him. If it really is so dangerous that I die, then at least I will learn that something big is going on here, he thought. Even if I have to stop what I'm doing, I will come back. You stay, I will go alone, Ning said. Huh? I'm going too, Kim said. As I said, gods are involved in this matter, he said, and he couldn't tell her about his lack of power just in case a constellation was listening to him. Anyway, stay here, he said and teleported away, leaving Kim with nothing to do. Ning appeared outside of the dungeon, surprising a few people that were working there. He didn't immediately enter the dungeon, however. He instead contacted Ely with his divine sense and told her what he was planning to do and how dangerous that task likely was. Ely wanted him to stay out, but she understood that it had to be done. Don't worry, she said. I know what to do in the case of emergency. Ning nodded after hearing her and finally was slightly relieved. He no longer had to worry about anything, even if he died. As such, he turned towards the gate of the dungeon and walked through it.